FOODPathS is organizing FITLOG in the 2022 in Brussels. We dare to discuss the future of EU sustainable food systems.
The path to sustainable food systems leads to the FOODPathS Festival in Brussels. Cheers to that!
Because for shaping our food systems towards sustainability, we need all brains and hearts out there.
Because your voice is essential for shaping European sustainable food systems.
FOODPathS shows us the importance of involving farmers and the food industry from the first beginning to achieve better solutions for the food system.
To have conversations about minimizing trade-offs and maximizing core benefits for sustainable food systems in Europe and across the world.
Come join us in this 3-day event. Grasp your chance to learn about the prototype partnership and give your feedback on how we can work together to transform our current food systems into ones that are sustainable for climate, people and health.
Hi, if you're interested in the topics related to the sustainable food systems, you should come to Brussels for the FOODPathS Festival. It will be a great place to meet and discuss the future of us and our planet.
Because it's gonna be fun and we're gonna have a lot of food system conversations together.
To share a delicious meal.
To join our networking sessions and meet many other food system actors.
Finally, a European inclusive partnership dream comes true. For this and millions of other reasons, you should join the FOODPathS Festival.
See you there.
We need you.
See you in Brussels.
So we don't have our policies, you know? No. But what about this education of skills? Yes,
Hi, I propose that we start on time, to finish on time, because a lot of you have planes, trains to take to go back home. So, hi everyone, I'm Emmanuelle Lagendic. I'm from INRA Transfer, and I'm very pleased to welcome you for this third and final day of the FOODPathS Festival. I hope you enjoyed the previous days and the visits from yesterday and the cocktail, beers. I hope they were good. So today we will have 2 sessions in the morning. So the first one, playing like an orchestra, and then a coffee break. And the other one, it will be Beyond the Horizon, the FOODPathS Legacy for Horizon Europe Partnership. So this will be in plenary. Please don't forget to test our quiz. It's a funny way to know more about the FOODPathS project. And just after the meeting, you will receive a feedback form to fill in, to give your feedback about this festival organization. So in any case, I think that you did a really great job by organizing this meeting. And I'm very pleased to introduce the moderator of the next session, Playing Like an Orchestra, who is Natasha Foot, a freelance journalist, podcaster and moderator specializing in EU agri-food policy. So thank you, Natasha.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, hello, welcome to this third and final day of the FOODPathS Festival. I'm very happy to be moderating this. As Emmanuelle said, my name's Natasha Foot. I work as an agri-food journalist based here in Brussels. I have the pleasure of guiding the discussions over this third and final day. But of course, it's last but not least. We still have lots of fun to come, more foundational bricks to lay in building this path towards sustainable food systems. So let me introduce the first panel session of today, and that's Playing Like an Orchestra, as you said. And I really love this analogy. I think it's a perfect metaphor for building sustainable food systems. If you're not interacting, if you're not listening to each other, if one instrument is too loud, one is too quiet, if you're not perfectly in tune or playing from the same song's sheet, you're going to end up with a really funky sounding piece of music. And also crucially, if you don't have a conductor, things get messy really quickly, even with the best musicians. So with everything in harmony, you create something really beautiful, and that's what we're going for with the creation of sustainable food systems. So our next panel is exploring exactly that, all the different instruments in this food systems orchestra, how we can best play together. So as conductor, I'm now going to welcome to the stage our speakers. I'm just going to take a seat. So our first speaker today, we have with us today Gert Meisemans, who is from the European Technology... Is Gert here? Ah, yes, good. Welcome to the stage. Director for Research and Development for Cargill Food for Europe, Middle East and Africa, and from the European Technology Platform Food for Life, a passionate leader in food industry innovation. So welcome to the stage, Gert. We also have with us today Claudia Marzek from the municipality of Wrocław. So Claudia is a Master of Engineering in Environmental Protection, specializes in climate adaptation and food security at the city of Wrocław. So welcome to the stage. We also have with us Anne Trevenant-Jones from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, so that's GAIN. So she leads GAIN's Food Systems Governance Programme, influencing and driving inclusive governance and sustainable mobilisation for sustainable food system transformation. Also represents GAIN in urban and rural focused global coalitions. So Anne is here in front of me. Excellent. Welcome to the stage, Anne. We've really got a full house. We've got lots of people today. And our next panelist is Reza Pekentieni, who is the Secretary General of the Association for European Life Science Universities and chair of the ICA European Committee. So she works on fostering collaboration between universities, policymakers, and industry. So welcome, Rosa. We also have with us Antonella Ottino. So she's a programme coordinator at PRIMA, the EU Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area. So she's played a key role in its development, now leads its annual work programme. So Antonella, welcome. And last but not least, we have with us Daniele Rossi from EU Farmers Association Copenhagen, who is a statistician and economist from Luxembourg, R&I Managing Director at Confi Agricultura, and Secretary General of Agro Network. So that was all quite a lot. We've got a full house here. And as I said, all full houses of orchestras require good conductors. And actually, we have two conductors today, not just me, but I'm also very happy to be joined by Gabriella Verstig, who is Director of FOST, leading efforts to promote collaboration and innovation in food science and technology. We'll add her flavour from her work with FOODPathS, and she's been instrumental in coordinating this. So I guess we need to play some musical chairs in this orchestra. That's okay, that's fine. Maybe, Gabriella, would you like to take this seat and I'll stand from the podium? Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Great. So I'm over here, but I can still see you all. That's absolutely fine. So let's firstly kick off with a round of kind of introductory remarks and really bring the flavour that you're each bringing to this panel, because you're all coming from different perspectives, different flavours. So I'll start at this side and then I'll work my way down, as I think that makes the most sense. So Daniele, from your perspective, talking from the Farmers Association perspective, how do you see your role evolving in co-creating more sustainable food systems through this FOODPathS partnership prototype? Can you contextualize FOODPathS a little bit and what it means for your work and your approach? I'll pass you the microphone.
Sorry.
That's okay. There we go.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I'm very happy to be here, so thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for being here and listening the full immersion, 3 days full immersion on the partnerships, and in particular in FOODPathS. I have to say two things at the beginning. The first one is that we see the idea of the partnership as a very, very strong, powerful and long-term idea. So this is very, very helpful for us. It means when you invest In research and innovation, you have to think not only, you have to have a vision, but also to think in the long term. It's not something that is happen every year, so you change your ideas, etc. You have to invest, you have to spend money, you have amortment, you have a balance sheet, so it's not so easy for a farmer or for a food industry, in particular SMEs, small farmers, to invest in research and innovation without a vision, without a long-term activity. So this is a fantastic opportunity. The second point is that we have to understand how is diverse our world. We have large farmers, agro-cooperatives that are larger than some food industry. So we have people that are working on the first processing and the second processing. And we have also farmers that are very locally based, very old. It's an aging sector, very rooted in their local activities, with 2 or 3 hectares, 4 hectares, maybe not specialized, maybe with some tourism, with renewable energies, multifunction. So we are very specialized farmers, and at the same time we are very, very multifunctional old farmers that are doing their best to live in this market. So that's the very, so partnership is a good opportunity to have this diversity inside, not outside, inside, to bring the diversity on board. It's very, very important. The third point, and I stop immediately, the third point is how to bring not only the single company, single farmer, etc., but to bring the organization of our representative bodies. And this is very, very important because we have a very, very strong representative bodies all over the world, all over Europe, not only Copa-Cogeca. Copa-Cogeca is an umbrella organization in Brussels. But behind Copa-Cogeca, we have hundreds of farmers' associations, hundreds of food industry associations, with Food Drink Europe as an umbrella. So we have to understand that we have to bring on board not only the single company, single farmer, etc., but all these kind of organizations that are the best way to transfer technology, transfer knowledge, organize the process of innovating, to bring them all the system, the food system, exactly in the same line, in the same baseline to start with the partnership.
Excellent, thank you. I really liked what you said there about all the different flavours of farmers as well. It's so easy to get caught into the farmers say this. But yeah, we'll dig into that a bit later on and how we bring these voices in. But firstly, let me come to Antonella now. Let me put the same question to you from your perspective, how you see your role evolving and co-creating, with this FOODPathS partnership.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I actually here I'm representing a partnership, a EU partnership, the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area called PRIMA. We are working with research and innovation with southern Mediterranean countries. This is one of our specificity, and we work on water sector, farming system, and food system. So this is the reason also of our interest here. In fact, I am very pleased to see that the work that has been done by the project and FOODPathS is close now to the partnership of sustainable food system, the future food, and in terms of adoption, it's what we would like to see, in fact, that project outcomes are taken up also by partnership as governance model. This is quite difficult because, in fact, in terms of partnership, of research and innovation partnership, it's quite stick to legal framework, and there are stiffness in the organization and the legal framework that do not allow this kind of, let's say, things. And so our work, and I speak for PRIMA, of course, it's mainly, so far, it has been mainly of funding, which is very good, very nice, but it's not enough. So this is the first.
The funding is not enough.
No, the funding is not enough. Yeah, okay. No, but it's not enough just to fund calls and research and projects and solutions that are useful. We have to work in a sense that they have to be taken up. And this is a very important lesson learned from the FOODPathS project and the prototype that has been presented there. which, by the way, and here I anticipate because we are also working for the future of our partnership, because we are working for the continuation, of course, but with 2,500 beneficiary people around the Mediterranean working on the same challenge, because we are working on the challenge related to water scarcity, to farming system, we have the issues of food security. So with all these issues at the stake, well, we need something else, and that is the reason why we are working, and we have adopted, let's say, in the future of the partnership already, a model which is quite similar, but to what has been presented as governance and prototype model. So I'm speaking there, and I anticipate that there could be a potential adoption in the future from the PRIMA partnership. For calls, and now, because we are also speaking about now what we are doing, and that is something that we will perhaps go after in next questions, and in terms of adoption of the RIPE concept, for us it's also already in these, in the calls that we are launching, we are trying to consider the policy alignment, education, which for us is very tricky because results from the projects very hardly go to the education, the university. This is very difficult because we have solutions, but then it's difficult to include them in curricula. So this is for sure a problem that we have seen. But so just to finalize, the point is that the idea is this prototype concept is bringing also the research and innovation programs, international research and innovation program, towards evolving, to take up your question, from funders of calls to something else, considering as enabler of this policy dialogue and perhaps making a reality this research and innovation policy and education, which is for the moment not yet there, I can say.
All right. We'll have time to dig in. You brought up some things we'll definitely dig into, the RIPE concept for sure. And very interesting what you said about the money. We talk a lot about the money in Brussels, but you're right, if it's not directed in the right way, you don't necessarily get the results. We will dig into that further. But firstly, Ressa, let me come to you. We ended on the note about education, research. I think that's a nice link. It's a nice segue for me, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, so from my perspective and representing European life science universities through ICA, our role in co-creating more sustainable food systems is deeply rooted in education, research, and stakeholders' engagement. And the FOODPathS partnership prototype, of course, offers a valuable framework to amplify this role in several ways. And first of all, as a network of 54 life science universities across Europe, we can increasingly act as a knowledge hubs, connecting fundamental and applied research with real-world practices. And through the prototype, we can co-develop and validate the solutions across all these RIPE elements, ensuring that they are evidence-based, context-sensitive and scalable. And also, as universities, we are well positioned for fostering transdisciplinary collaboration, also facilitating the dialogue with farmers, policymakers, industry, and civil society, and connect the agronomists, economists, sociologists, and food technologists, right? And I believe that the prototype can serve as a platform for such orchestration. Yes, and also yesterday and the day before yesterday we discussed that to build a sustainable food system we must invest in people. So yes, and at this point our evolving role includes reforming curricula, developing the co-learning platforms, and equipping future professionals with system thinking, participatory skills, and value-based leadership. And the last but not least, I believe that ICA is acting and can act as a challenger of the status quo. What I mean is that as a network of academic institutions, we also have a responsibility to critically reflect on prevailing paradigms, norms, and concepts, and advocate for just, inclusive, and ecological transition. So through the FOODPathS project, other similar projects and similar initiatives, we can contribute by questioning all the assumptions and elevating underrepresented voices and food system governance. And it's just for us to decide what are the best pathways to achieve the biggest and the fastest impact.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And let me come to you now, maybe taking a slightly different view, a slightly zoomed out view, the more global perspective. You've got the microphone there?
Yeah. Yes, thanks very much. So although this is very Euro-focused for us, it links to our global agenda. Europe is a leader for us and very important in our particularly sub-Saharan African programmatic work that we work with, but also it sets the tone globally. So we're very interested to see how this very useful new definition of food systems governance will influence global agendas, the tone at CFS, the Committee for Food Security and Nutrition. We're very interested to see how our donors and our global partners that are based in Europe, how that starts to influence their thinking. We need to be creating bridges, so not only in the global space, but for us, what are those bridges between our programmatic work in Africa and Asia? We do a lot of things that are here, but our living labs are not dotted around. They are the communities and the local and city governments we actually work in. So we're very interested to see the agility in that learning agenda that is part of the prototype, to see how the agency of citizens, the agency of local and city governments is mobilized within the living labs here to see what are those lessons, how does one adapt flexibly in real time. The education and the knowledge hubs are very interesting for us, who's trying to constantly go backwards and forwards so we can start talking more of the same language, because we do see this can be a fundamental shift in the way that our European-based partners and donors think about food systems investment. And for us, nutrition that's why we do food systems transformation, is systemic. It is about biodiversity. It is about climate-smart crops. It's about going back to those things. Food safety and hygiene are all about not only reducing nutritional quality if you have poor quality safety, but it's about wasted earth systems resources. So for us, we see it all the way, livelihoods, local economic development. So this, the bird, is very interesting to see how those come into play. We've struggled a little bit, how do we bring all of those components together? So on the one, we have a learning agenda, but we also hope to be part of the wider conversation. So bringing in maybe some of the experiences that you can have in the Global South to inspire your lighthouses across the work in your knowledge hub, but also just to be more coherent as we evolve in this. I know there's a technological innovation space, but also the social innovation, which is really key for us. I'll probably stop there. Hand over. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. Geert, we've already had more from the farm side of the food chain, more to the fork, more to the industry side of things. Let me bring you in here for your perspective on this.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I'm here talking on behalf of the European technology platform Food for Life, where we're trying to represent the foods and ingredient manufacturing industry and work together there with academia, with different partners, and reviewing there also our strategic research and innovation agenda. And we just updated that one, and we really took a systems and a systemic view on that one. Because historically, if we think about it, food and food manufacturing likes it when we can talk about value chains, when things are linear, when things are simple. And then we can talk about, and Daniele hinted at that, we can start thinking about competitiveness and we can start thinking about profitability. But it doesn't work anymore, huh? It doesn't, and then we can optimize whatever we do in each of these individual steps. But today we find ourselves in a situation where the change in that food industry, the change because of everything previous speakers have hinted at, is happening. It doesn't work anymore as an efficiency value chain. And we need to go back to, historically, partnerships. It's how do we work together? How do we redesign value chains? And with those redesigned value chains, then what does that mean? And if you step into that with a mindset of optimizing for efficiency and not thinking about effectiveness or so on, never going to get there. And that is why we are so supportive of what's happening here and really like that word of partnerships. Because if we can prototype that, if we can learn how those things work, then I come to your question on how do we see our role evolving there, then we can start scaling that, right? Because this affects so many people, to your point, and not only in Europe, but across Europe. Europe is an exporter of food products. We import a lot of raw materials also, but we export food. People like that. And how do we do that? And if we can figure that out via those prototypes and then start working on scaling that, we might get there. One of the key challenges we see happening for us there is the speed at which this needs to happen today. That is different from, let's call it 30, 40 years ago, where we had more time and more flexibility, but all the pressures on climate, on geopolitical, on the population demographics, you name them, are putting us really in a tough spot on making sure that we can figure out how to do that scaling, but then also invest and deliver that scaling fast enough so that society appreciates that. And that's the big one for us.
Thank you very much for that. And Claudia, hiding at the side, last but not least, let me come to you now.
Okay, so as a city, we see our role as a supporter of implementation of food policy and strategies and regulations related to food. Also, we know as a city, we play an important role in education and we feel it's our duty. So we also play support a role in this, because also in our city we have a campaign about no wasting food, and we know how it is important to educate the youngest residents of our city. Also, I think what is important for us is to have a system that will help us to monitoring our actions. Because of course we can monitor it, but if data will change, we don't know exactly what changed inside this system. And also, I think as a city, we can create a platform for dialogue, because when it's something happen in the city, citizens always first call to us, okay, what we can do, how you can help us. So I think we can also be a platform for dialogue.
Thank you very much. Well, we were all talking about partnerships, and I'm now going to pass over to my partner here, who's going to take the word for this next round of questions.
Thank you. Yeah, so before taking it further and talking about the orchestra and talking about the players in the orchestra, I think it's good that we also see if we can identify some silos. So where do you see the silos between your specific fields? How do you think should they be solved? How can they be solved? And where do you see also the opportunities for synergies? And I would like to start with Antonella, Raza and Geert for this question. Thank you.
Well, in terms of silo, well, in Prima we are also dealing with this, thematic sectorial silos. So we are dealing with water, food, farming, ecosystem. In particular, those in those sectors, even in the ministries, there is not so much alignment and coordination. So already there we see silos, and this is what we are still trying to not eliminate, but at least to facilitate dialogue between the different sectors. And when we are speaking about systemic integration, like FOODPath, but in a different way, but still, the stakeholder engagement there is very important. So in Prima as well, we have the same issues related to the different silos in terms of policy, participation of civil society, practitioner. These, in fact, still, we see that they are working on their own, and there is not so much dialogue between them. So, still, policy is and research and innovation is very much a big silo. and as well the participation also of practitioner, because in fact the needs of practitioner is very much important. Otherwise, research and innovation produce solution, but for what? And they will be adopted by whom? So at the end of it, adoption is not there. So this is an important silos that we have to eliminate. And those policy dialogue with those stakeholder engagement platform that are also and proposed by FOODPath, I think, well, there might be no the only solution, but in fact they might facilitate the dialogue, which for some cases does not exist. Then, in fact, considering the Mediterranean region specificities, this dialogue sometimes is even more difficult because there is a problem of confidence, of trust between the local actors and the policymaker. So there is even issues related, well, sometimes to corruption, which it's still a problem in the Mediterranean region, and in southern countries in particular. Yeah, just to give some points of reflection there related to our experience.
Do you also see some synergies, possibilities for synergies?
Yes.
Instead of only the silos, how we can break them down?
Yes, synergies, I think, and in terms of convergence are linked to similar objectives. This is what we are also seeing with the intersectorial, let's say, dialogue, considering and showing the benefits of talking and of this dialogue. Having similar objectives and showing the benefits of adopting a certain direction could be, let's say, a way, an entry point for this change. This experience comes from our side to put together through community of practice. We did this exercise, so it's another platform, in fact, for stakeholder engagement, trying to connect the different sectors. And the different sector, I'm speaking about the ministries, which is very difficult because each one thinks about his own. And considering that one aspect might affect the other. But in fact, this does not happen. So showing the benefits of working together, showing the benefits of adopting intersectorial or integrated approach, little by little. This is coming to, at least there is a consciousness of, and perhaps it comes to an action. So I wanted to bring in also our experience there in terms of policy alignment.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I can agree with Antonella and want to say that one of the most persistent silos in food systems is disconnect between science and practice, between the researchers and those implementing change on the ground, such as farmers, SMEs, and civil society groups. And another is between policy and innovation, where research insights and grassroots experimentation always struggle to meet and influence regulatory frameworks. And the third, which is, I think, very important, is academia itself. It is disciplinary silos that prevent system-level thinking. And the most important silos to break down, I think, between the science and practice, because the real-world transformation depends on co-learning and mutual understanding. And these silos can be broken down when universities actively engage and cooperate in transdisciplinary projects, when they invite non-academic actors into research processes and co-design solutions together with them. And I really believe that life sciences and life science universities have a pivotal role here, both as facilitators and as institutions that can legitimize collaboration across the boundaries.
Thank you. Good to hear. Maybe Geert, you can also add something.
Yeah, I agree with all of you there, and therefore I'm going to provoke and say that I'm just telling it up front. Why do we always want to break down silos? Some silos.
My question, which I deleted, was, and why do we need to? And I thought I deleted it because it's logic. But
Some silos are really good, right? Because you don't want to leave the crop on the field. You want to have it on your farm in a silo to have it accessible. In my factory, I don't want to mix the mayonnaise and the ketchup. They're good things to keep separated. But where I do agree with that, where we do see the problem, is that another example would be academic research would never survive in my industrial environment. The degree of tolerance of my company, my industry, for that type of work, which is hugely important, it wouldn't fit. So rather than breaking down all the silos, I hope we can focus on what are the metrics, why are those silos there, and how do you keep using them? Part of the problem that we have today is that everybody in a silo starts defining their own reasons for existence and their own metrics on what they call good and not good. And as we just talked about, it's a food system. And a food system only works if we think about it as a system and if we think about it end to end. And so I'm a big fan of trying to figure out how can we make sure that throughout that entire system, through that partnership, through the conductor of the orchestra, how do we make sure that we get to the music, as you said in the beginning, and not get into some kind of atonic type of music? And that's driven really by, first and foremost, understanding what is in your silo and what is in my silo. And that's very uncomfortable. That's very uncomfortable, and none of us gets bonus points for that. And so if we don't change that, and maybe as another example, recently we've been entering into much more constructive dialogues with EFSA than in the previous years. And you see the willingness also at European institutions to start more thinking in systems and more thinking it's not about what's happening at this step, it's how does this step contribute to the whole. And if we can get to that point, I'm going to defend a few silos.
Thank you. Maybe I can ask then one follow-up question to you, Daniel. So from the farmers, okay, I will come to you later. So from the farmer's perspective, how do you see what Geert just mentioned? How do you see that? What's your point of view on that?
Thank you. I agree 100% with our colleague Geert, because sometimes, in my experience, I started with the food industry, I may say 35 years ago. So I have a long history of management in the food industry. And sometimes crises, conflicts, difficult exchanges help us make a jump to put, how you say, the stick a little bit higher and to discuss in terms of strategy more than in terms of emergency. And this was a point also for the European Union, for the European institutions, that we saw in the past that the big jump of the European institution was made when the crisis was there. And I hope this terrible war in Ukraine and also the experience we had in COVID give us the possibility to make this jump also in the future in health systems and in peacekeeping. Another point very important is to foster the dialogue. When we speak about the dialogue, it's very important to help us in saying that all the participants of the dialogue has the same authority. Have the same authority. It's very, very important, because otherwise, if the academy think that they have the best position and they have the solutions and they have the, how you say, they have the real knowledge, and we have a biased knowledge, and we have, as producers, unfair behaviors, etc., etc. You made a list of the bad things we are doing on water management, on pesticides, on ultra-processed food. We have a list of that. Sometimes the dialogue is so difficult because wording is very, very different. Word is very, very different. So I agree with Gerd. Sometimes silos has to be defended, protected, and sometimes the dialogue has to put in a facilitator could be a very useful thing because facilitator help us in maintaining the balanced authorities, the balanced position. Yes.
Thank you. So this was about silos and synergies, and I'm sorry, I have to continue with I will refer a little bit more into detail on the RIPE concept later, but first I give the mic back to Natasha.
Thank you very much. If we have some time at the end, there might be a moment for some space for questions. I'll see what we can do. And very interesting, I really like the idea of defending the silos. It's an interesting concept. We do talk about breaking it down all the time. The only one I would challenge is the mayonnaise and ketchup, because I quite like mixing those. I'm not sure they should stay in silos, and mayonnaise is a touchy subject here in Belgium anyway. So, but I now want to move on to talking more about inclusivity and making sure that, you know, how we can make sure that through the prototype, through the Pathways prototype, we can better ensure inclusivity, especially for more marginalized and underrepresented food system actors, because there are some that have a lot of weight, as I said at the beginning, some instruments that are louder, some instruments that are quieter. So how we bring all of these together. And actually, Daniela, you just spoke, but I did want to start with you because you mentioned in your opening remark about the SMEs, about small farmers, about all the different kinds of flavors. And, you know, I think we talk a lot about bringing the farmer's voice as well to these kind of discussions. So perhaps I start here and then I move along. Oh, you've got one. Did you take this one? Yeah. So I don't lose my microphone.
2 points. We fight a lot in the past. We're still fighting for having less bureaucracy. We're still fighting for having the simple engagement of the farmers or the small actors in our innovation processes. And it's very complicated because sometimes to find the right way to help bureaucracy to simplify a little bit and to help the engagement of the farmers, it's a bit complicated because of transparency, because of prerequisite, etc. So my idea is easier, is how to involve umbrella organization. It's the same approach as Gerd said before about the technological platform. There was a very nice experience we had. I was from the Food for Life, I was the chair for the Food for Life from the first beginning. And I remember, Gerd, that at the beginning we had a lot of very good reputation by the Commission, by the administration, by the ministry, etc. So we started in a very good way. Then I didn't understand what happened in the history of the platform. But this was something like, it was an embryo, I would say, an egg, a first egg of the partnerships at the time. Because we had in the Food for Life platform, all in the technology platforms, all the actors inside, all the representative bodies inside, large companies, small companies, ministries, authorities, research agencies. So it was a very good idea. But I think that this idea is a little bit, in general, I agree with Hugo, with Sabios. In general, we have no good manager of complexity. And if the complexity is there, it's very difficult to find somebody that will be, I would say, so responsible, so competent to take this in charge. And maybe the future, that could be a point of education, how to build new knowledge on major complexity of the systems, because it's needed more and more.
And talking about complexity of the systems, perhaps I'll come to Anne now for the same question. Do you have a mic? Yeah, the same question. I mean, in terms of ensuring inclusivity, making sure that everyone's voice is heard in this conversation.
Yes, we deal a lot with that from our experience. One is not just being able to identify who those voices are can they be empowered? Do they have the time? Do they have the space to actually be participant in these forums that have been created? Because it's very important that they are part of creating those narratives. If they don't see themselves in those narratives, whatever data you may bring will always contrast with anecdotal experience, anecdotal evidence, business as usual practices, historical and cultural links. So for us, you have to start with that. Start bringing people on board and inviting them to be not only part of the conversation, but part of the narrative creation, co-creation, so that they can see and they can listen. Until that happens, people can't bridge that divide. So when you can, and the other one that I think is so important in your orchestra is the comms across multiple generations, but also inclusion for multiple types of communities. I think that would be, I was very struck by the previous speaker on day one, who talked about, I think it's a year to change our attitudes, and I was a bit shocked that we are so malleable, but that's a very interesting dynamic and a very positive one in our generation to change those perceptions, those frameworks that we currently work in. And I think that's an underexplored area, including when you talk about data, which is very siloed. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Claudia, let me come to you now. Antonella said something in earlier on in maybe your introductory remarks or maybe your response to your second question about specificities in the area that she works with, which maybe makes it more difficult to bring certain actors in. Just wanted to bring you in your experience of the areas that you've worked in, Central Europe, more Eastern, in terms of your view on if there are any particular kind of economic, cultural, political particular specificities that make it more difficult to work with this prototype in your experience?
Sorry, yes, there are some. I will start from the financial resources, as always. We need the money to do something for the citizens, because of course we have to serve the basic needs, we have to help them, but also if we want to create something above, it means also partnerships in the food system, we need more money to doing this. But also when we are talking about cultural things, in my case, is our history, because we were in the communism. So in general, at that time, citizens didn't trust the local government and national government. And in my generation, in young generations, it changed, but in the older generations, it's all the time the same. So sometimes it's hard to break this barrier. But it doesn't mean that we are not trying. We are trying to doing this. We are trying to help people who are at the risk of social exclusion, also vulnerable groups. We are inviting them to the citizens meetings, to the workshops, to the projects. But sometimes we are, we getting answer, no, we want to be engaged. We want to be involved, like leave us alone. So sometimes it's very hard to cooperate, but we are trying. And I can say, one example in our city is that last year we started a project called Wrocław Urban Farm. And this is a very unique model of cooperation, but because this is cooperation between city, business, university, and NGO. And this is an example how universities, business, and NGO, and especially people who are at risk of social exclusion, because this is our charges who are working on the farm, can cooperate together and build somehow self-sufficiency for the food system in Wrocław, but also food security for our city.
And on the same kind of theme, Antonella, let me bring you in here. I mean, you mentioned a few specificities already of, moving from one side of Europe to another, very different specific problems in the Mediterranean, drought, etc. You also spoke about some other specificities. Can you talk us through a little bit kind of cultural, political, economic factors that you think could make it particularly difficult or particularly successful as well in the Mediterranean region?
Yes, I mentioned before at cultural level the lack of trust that in institutions that is there, and is also part of cultural. In terms of capacity also, this is another aspect that it's related and is specific to the region. And in addition to policy, not alignment, let's say disalignment, which is not only characteristic in the Mediterranean. And of course, and I'm going back also to the question that you made on the inclusivity. There, in particular in southern Mediterranean country, the gender inequality is still very strong, and too often also women are not even able to access to capacity development, and so to use innovation, because at the end this is also an issue, because perhaps innovation are there and they cannot not have access to those innovations.
Yeah, thank you for raising that very important point. I think the time is ripe now for me to pass over to Gabriella. Her questions, let me pass to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the RIPES concept has been discussed the former 2 days. The research and innovation and science to policymakers and education relation, and what is the structure for that, the framework for that. And I'm also interested then to hear from your perspective, how do you see the different actors from your side? Where could there be more collaboration? Where should there be more effort? And I would like to start maybe with Raza. So,
yes, thank you. I think with ECO we clearly see how the RIPE components should work together to drive sustainable food systems, and we do have successful examples within our network, like multi-actors EU projects or living labs where students, researchers, farmers can co-create solutions. And actually, those are powerful spaces where research feeds education, innovation is tested in practice, and the policy ideas are piloted on the ground. However, all these synergies are still exception, but not the norm. Why? Because institutional structures, funding models, or reward systems often keeps these elements apart. And for example, universities are still largely evaluated by academic outputs, but not by their societal impact or collaboration with the policymakers or farmers. And the policy processes not always involve educators or researchers early enough to shape the meaningful strategies, the curriculums, and etc. And what is missing in this all RIPE elements, from my point of view, is a stronger focus on governance and incentives, how we actually structure long-term collaboration and recognize the shared success. And what we need funding and frameworks that reward this cross-sectorial collaboration and impact, not just an individual excellence. That's where I think initiatives like the FOODPathS can make a real difference, and we need more of that.
Thank you very much. So, can you give the mic to Claudia? Oh yeah. Okay. So, Claudia, from your perspective, how do you, which of the RIPE elements do you see are most critical and most difficult to implement in practice, and why, from your city perspective?
Mm-hmm. I will start with universities, because we collaborate with universities. We have a good collaboration, but in the same time, sometimes we're getting results that it's so hard to implement in the city because they are too idealistic, they cost too much, they are not acceptable by the citizens. So sometimes it's fine it's hard to find a meeting point between those two groups, like city and universities. So sometimes it's also hard to beat these barriers. But I'd also would say, maybe not for the RIPE concept, but civil society, it's also hard sometimes to engage there, because if they are come as representatives of their company, it's okay, but it's hard to engage them as citizens, because we all forget that we are citizens of our city. So also we are creating something together for us, not for our company, not just for the city as an institution, like for us all. And as a city, I think we need also methodology and toolkits that will be useful for us to implement all this RIPE concept. And also, as I mentioned before, financial resources I always needed for the cities.
So, and the remark that Raza made about the governmental structure and incentives, how do you reflect on that?
Yes, I think we also need better collaboration between different levels of government and also European government, European Parliament, because usually local governments are ahead national governments, and we are doing more at the local level because we are understanding better our citizens. So sometimes it's hard also to find meeting points between each others. But now I can say we have a new government. New, it means like 2 years ago, we chose our new government, and they're starting to collaborate with cities again. So I think we are on the good path.
If I may add something on this, I think one missing element is the clearer mechanisms for long-term engagement and capacity building. I think that the prototype would be stronger if it supported institutional learning over time, not just individual projects, so that universities and partners can grow together over the time. Also, the more emphasis on youth involvement and leadership development would help to ensure this long-term change.
Thank you. Do you have time for one last? So maybe, Geert, can I also ask your how you take position in this RIPE concept as representative of the food and drink industry?
Yeah, I can try. Me, the whole industry is a little bit difficult. But the way we think about it really is thinking about it in terms of readiness. If things need to change, is everybody ready to make that change? And to your point, consumers and citizens are not necessarily the same. As a consumer, I probably behave a little bit different than when I'm a citizen. If you talk about the policy requirements, if that framework is not there and is not strong enough that it gives entrepreneurs or food manufacturers or farmers the confidence that I am going to produce and I am going to contribute on it, then it's never going to happen. So we really think about it at each of the elements that you talk about. If there are no educated people who can work for us, who can know how to produce food in a safe way, we're not going to get anywhere. If there is no policy framework that allows us to do that and give a longer-term view on economic viability of it, it's not going to do that. If there is no innovative concepts, what am I going to do? Exactly the same thing as the guy next door, and therefore probably, well, why would I do it, right? So it's a very integrated view that needs to happen there, but we're trying to be careful, and I think one of the things that is missing is how do we measure really readiness of everybody?
Yeah, that's a good question. But maybe then I will link that to Antonella. Do you maybe have an experience or an example where any of the RIPE principles were successfully or unsuccessfully applied in past food system initiatives?
Yes, I can give an example of one of our projects. Namely, we have the project Lenses is called. It's a Nexus project, in fact, including food system, water, and land. In this, decision maker and farmers and have worked together to define indicators for water resilience. And they have applied it in Jordan and in Tunisia. And this has been done through, let's say, dialogue between the different parties. So it's a successful, for us, it's a successful outcome because really it showed that there was not only dialogue, but construction and trust in defining those indicators that are actually adopted. So I think this is our first example. Then, as I was saying before, let's say policy uptake is one of the most critical aspects that still we are facing and we would like to work with, and to address this aspect as well as education. That for us, we still see very far away the possibility to have the research outcomes from our project to be adopted in education curricula. This is something that still I see a little bit too far from what can really come to reality. And yeah, then it was a point related to what is lacking for us in the RIPE. It's financial institutions that can, in fact, help and support in upscaling innovation, because funding is also needed there. So it will, let's say, close the loop.
Okay, thank you. Staying on the point of really, real-world examples, really tangible examples of this working or not working. Daniele, let me come to you. I think both of our previous speakers mentioned farmers there. Do you find that the proposed prototype tools and pathways are really usable, adaptable on the ground in the day-to-day work or strategies? What do you think would make this more relevant, speaking from the farmer's perspective? I think you've got yeah.
Yes, of course we need a bottom-up approach, at the same time a top-down approach. So it means that we have to understand the real needs of the farmers daily, in a brief term, short term, and long term. At the same time, we have to bring these needs to a higher level, to the policymakers, to the debate on the strategy on the long-term period. And I have two solutions, very nice. The first one is, Jonas is here, we have started 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, with the Pact for Skills. So it's a very new idea, very interesting, to upskilling and reskilling the workforce and entrepreneurship, and to help them to make to face this kind of very hard challenges in a quick way. And the Pact for Skills has to be diffused, disseminated more and more. The engagement of the company has to be achieved and so on. But it's a very, very interesting pathway to upskilling and reskilling our workforces, first of all. Secondly, as you know, we started with our partnership, the private. We asked for a proposal on Food for All, this one, to help future food in a complementary way. It means to increase the leverage of investment of the private sector, together with the public activity made by Future Food, with their own calls. So we are very, very complementary in this proposal. And we think that we need both together in parallel, working each other with a good dialogue. And last but not least, I have to say that we have to change a little bit the way to proceed with the we have the Horizon experience or the Prima experience. We have to reinvent some very good, say, way to engage the farmers and the small companies, the small actors. And it means to organize ourselves with lump sums, to facilitate the participation, to find some good tools to help them to come with us. And it's not so complicated, because we had some experience on forfeiting, of giving them the possibility to be on board with the flagship, with demo event, with the innovation hubs, as you know, etc. And they are very, very willing to participate. They are not willing to put money because they have no money at all.
That's always the sticking point, isn't it? But at least the participation's there, the money we can maybe solve in future work. Anne, let me come to you now on this point, on the real world use of FOODPaths. I'll put the same question to you. You know, do you find that these tools are really usable and adaptable to your specific context of where you're working? Is there anything missing in the prototype that you need for the kind of context that you work in?
No, I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of the things that we have been looking at in our toolkits. The fundamentals are coming out in your toolkits, and for us, it would be about not reinventing the wheel, but actually enhancing, so that there is, you know, not millions and millions of toolkits out there, but there is some common ground, there is some common structure in it. I think for us, the skills gap, you know, as we move to new economies, that is huge, whether it's investor confidence, public and private funding, whether it's the mobilization of people to be agents of their own change and transition and long-term viability. That is a key point, this transition, but because we will leave more people behind in the current conditions. So we see these as very important for us. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Unless anybody else wants to come in at this point, I mean, we weren't planning to have questions from the audience, but as I'm conducting this orchestra, I understand, I've been told that there's a few questions from the audience, so I thought perhaps we could do those before we move to a round of concluding remarks. We had one here. Shall I bring you the microphone? Or pass the microphone? Oh, thank you, that's kind. If you could just say quickly who you are and who your questions are addressed to.
Yes, thank you. I really enjoyed the discussion on silos, and I think your question was also relevant. Do we need to break them down? I think not always, but we do need to be this bird that you showed yesterday or the day before, Hugo, and fly above our silos so that we can look around what's happening in other silos, so that we can look for elephants, because you all know I'm a big fan of elephants and I like looking for them. And I think one of these elephants is, when we look at a partnership for R&I, is how the research and innovation on what the money is spent. And that also drives change. And I was reading in a WHO report, commercial determinants of NCDs in the WHO European region, that of all R&I spending, 97% went to meat producers rather than to plant-based meat or cultivated meat groups. And almost all of these funds were aimed at improving meat productions. So I was wondering, for me, that's the big elephant in the room when we talk about sustainable food systems. Some of your views on this and how, with the partnership coming up, we could maybe work towards shifting that.
Okay, thank you. You didn't say who it was directed to, but did someone want to? My eyes were going maybe to Gert and Raisa. Oh, Anne, yes.
Would you like to answer as well? We can do it together.
we can. A couple can take
given that it is the WHO, I would say their meat focus is more about the health scares that have come from the meat. So it's a bias only from a health hygiene perspective that has also come out of the COVID days and bird flu and things like that. We know even from GAIN's side, when we work with WHO, we're also talking about we want a planetary diet, how do we work? And their emphasis has been in the last few years on meat from that point of view. So it is an important influencing moment. We will be interested to see their next 5-year agenda now that more systems are in place. But I think that is where the emphasis from WHO is coming.
Yeah, echo that. And then it's a valid question. It's a question on how do we think about what that future food system needs to look like. And that goes to the things we were talking about, citizens, consumers, how do they look at the world and where are our value systems and how do we make decisions of that? Companies. And companies who are part of that. Companies will react and companies will continue to supply things if it makes sense for consumers. By definition, if a company has no consumers, company is out of business, right? And there are plenty of examples of companies who have completely pivoted out of certain industries and moved into new industries exactly because consumers have moved. Now, chicken and egg, where do you start? Of course, and companies do have an accountability. The way we do about it, and now I'm talking as Cargill, because we do produce animal feed, we produce meat, and we produce a lot of plant protein as well. Even microbial protein we produce and we contribute to that. Because the way we think about that, from my perspective, is we look at it as an integrated system. There is part, if we harvest raw materials from a farm, if we buy that, if we start using that, there is parts of what we harvest which cannot be consumed by a human being as such. And then the two options I have is either add a lot of energy and a lot of technology to make it digestible for humans, or to use it as feed for animals. And yes, there is enormous work ongoing as well on how to make animal farming more sustainable. What can we do to make conversion rates of feed better and so on? And the consequence of that then is that, yeah, that gives you meat, and that gives people the opportunity to buy meat and eat meat. So things are evolving, and the evolution of insights in what drives what in terms of sustainability and in terms of resilience and security, very important, of the food systems as well, is increasing. And that is why you still see in consumers a growing trend of people in the wealthy areas of the world moving towards more plant-based. And that is very particular because if you look at emerging areas where middle class is raising, those people are pivoting to eating more meat, right? And so if we don't communicate about that properly, if we don't create alternatives for people, we will end up with a global food system that is not sustainable and that will break. And so it is really a matter of making sure that the right people, the policymakers, the citizens that we all are, but also the consumers that we are. If we go shopping, we vote with our wallet. As consumers, if we fail as a food partnership to raise that awareness and convince more consumers, we're going to be in trouble. And so it's like a real duty for all of us to participate to that and to be very outspoken and clear about that.
All right, thank you.
Financial streams, because they keep certain prices low for certain, anyway, the cap.
Yeah, we can talk a long time about
well, if we start talking about the cap, we're going to be here. I'm afraid we don't have time to start getting into a whole new
Well, I do want to make one point
you want to,
yes,
that, you can
which
respond
is
to
that if you look at competitiveness and profitability of the food industry, it's under stress. It's under significant stress, and do not underestimate. We can ask a lot of things from the food industry, but or from farmers. But if you look at margins and livelihoods of farmers, specifically in developing regions, if we don't, as consumers again, help to make these people earn a living that it should be, then we're even in more trouble, because nobody's going to pay for that except we.
All right, thank you for that. Very conscious that the clock is ticking. I think, was that the only question we had from the audience, or was there one other? I wasn't sure. No, that's good news for me, so I can manage the time more effectively. Excellent. So I think now we're going to move to a kind of concluding round to wrap up this kind of this orchestra that we've been playing. So perhaps I can start from the other side this time, from Claudia. A last message from your side of kind of like from your perspective on the food chain and what is really needed to tie harmonies together in this orchestra, make a sustainable food system symphony. That's right. So many music puns. A last concluding message from you, Claudia, and we'll move on the way down.
I think it's trust and dialogue between all partners in this prototype. I think it's the most important if we want to build sustainable food system and to cooperate together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a complex system, which means that nobody knows. So let's try. Let's try and do more of what works, and the things that really don't work, let's do less of those.
These are a lot shorter and sharper than I thought it was going to be. I think we're going to be ahead of time. But it's excellent. It's good. It's concise. And if you've got more to add, feel free.
No. I think the value of the prototype is not just to produce these nice, perfect case study best practices, but to be very transparent and honest about what didn't work, what were those challenges, and then how were they solved. That's much more useful for people to say, oh, we also had that problem, and then how did you solve it, and where did you go from there? Thanks.
Yes, thank you. I may repeat myself a bit, but I think that despite our different roles here in this room, we share the common urgency, right? We need for resilient, just and inclusive food systems that work for people and for planet. And we also share the common interest in innovation, education, and inclusive governance. And the common ground here, like I said, it's not just thematic, it's relational. We are all here because we believe in collaboration. So I wish really to continue this nice collaboration because it has a huge potential to make a long-term impact.
Yes, again, stakeholder engagement, and where all the categories, researcher, policymaker, private sector, farmers, the practitioners are all working together, like playing in an orchestra, and with a rhythm that it can be also enabled by partnership. Even by research and innovation partnership, through hubs, through a platform that can enable this dialogue that to me is fundamental so as to achieve what we want to achieve and address the common challenge we have.
I have to add one point on the governance. Because if we think only about the goals at the end, remember the Green Deal and the tractors outside, if you think only about the goals without thinking how to achieve these goals, the process. So a good governance is a governance that not is only thinking about the goal, idealistic, but it has to think about the process, how to achieve these goals, step by step, to bring it all together to the goals, with a humility, with the same position on each other, with the same authority of each other, maybe finding suboptimal solution, not optimal solution, suboptimal solution that could lead everybody to accept, to have a common consensus, step by step. Process is important as such as the goal is important, so together it's possible. Without the process, the governance will fail.
Did you want to come back on that point, Antonella, quickly? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay. In which case, maybe I'll just double check if there's any other questions from the floor. Yes. Yeah. Would you like my microphone, or would you like? Maybe you could take the microphone from Gert.
Yeah, I'd like to thank very much all the panelists for all their remarks, suggestions, also critical comments, and it is an enormous difficult journey. And I think that is, but there is a willingness, there are relations, there are establishment, and there is a willingness to share information. I think that's an extremely important point. There is one thing where I'd like to come back on, and that is the positioning of the partnership in the global, in our globalized world. And some made already remarks about it. Prima is connected to the north of Africa, of course, towards the Middle East even. You made also the remark, sometimes in Europe we see examples, but don't forget that we see wonderful examples somewhere else, on other continents. Let's take the bioeconomy strategies. Costa Rica is maybe an example for all of us in the world. And so my question is, what should we do? And then I come back to the remark of Daniel on this how question. Not only the goal, but how to reach it, what kind of step to follow. What should we need to do in a global context? Maybe we are complexifying everything because many more people, many more actors, many more different contexts and so on. But what could we do in a globalized world more with partnerships in their way of functioning? Do you have some suggestions?
Okay, excellent. Anne, I'm looking at you for this one, but perhaps also Antonella.
I thought industry.
Also, indeed, yeah, whoever wants to come.
I think at this stage in the prototype, you need to be focused on what you need to do for Europe. We are listening very carefully and watching, but I always think it's useful to have, sort of like what we had with the mirror groups, that consultation that we're not going to change anything, but that advisory where you have different role players. It's an inspiration, it's a dialogue, because as you move along the process, we're going to see our donors and our partners shifting, and we want to be part of that. And so in influencing and inspiration. Thanks.
The world is going to remain global, yeah, hopefully. And that's simply from an effectiveness and efficiency viewpoint. If you see somehow global demographics are evolving across the world, then by necessity there will be part of food which is going to travel. We can try to be very sustainable in every region, and we should. Everybody should be as sustainable and as self-reliant as we can be. But there are certain elements that will make that very, very difficult. So we have to. So it's not a question of should, but we think we have to. And we have to have that openness. But the only way it works, and that is becoming more and more difficult, and actually we're a bit worried about that, is that if people are willing to play the game fairly. And part of the things that you see happening now is that because of, let's call it geopoliticals for lack of a better word, if people start thinking about import and export and tariffs left and tariffs right, it's making it very difficult. And so what we definitely should learn is that we tried that in history before and clearly have proven that it didn't work. And so if we can make it transparent on where trading, import-export makes sense and helps to make the food system and more resilient and more secure, then it makes sense. If we continue on the road we're taking in the last year, it's not the rich people that will suffer and that will have problems with getting their nutrition balance organized. It's the smallholders, it's the farmers, it's the people today, the growing amount of people who are malnourished. And therefore, I think we all have a responsibility to talk about that, act on it, and not let it happen.
Antonella, the Prima was mentioned. Did you want to come back on this point?
In fact, as Hugo said, the activities the Prima partnership is already addressing some global challenge, in fact, and so it's in terms of for sure we have to address it at the global level because the challenges are global, and in terms of complexity, considering the specificity of each of the context. But I have not any more to add to that.
Yes, I have the last point, a very important thing. I agree 100% that we need Hugo to think not only on quality, but also on quantity. The food security is always there. Globalization needs that. If you go to India, there are 1.4 billion people. If you go to China, 1.3 billion people. And they're asking for more meat. Incredible. So we think that it's impossible to say to them, no, please, because of sustainability, no, please, because you don't need it, no, please, because dietary from the World Health Organization saying the differently. So we have to need help and to raise awareness of their own food system, raise awareness, and to open the disinformation with a good reputation, good repair, good integrity, to help them to make the good choices in the long term. In the brief term, it's impossible. In the long term, it could be possible, and exchanging with the international, also scientific. I remember the UFOS meeting we had in Rimini. It was very, very interesting because we have a very strong Indian delegation and Chinese delegation, and they help us in understanding a little bit more what happens in their own country. So to open the windows, to open the dialogue more and more, and to accept that the world is not only on quality and top premium protected niches for rich people of Europe. But we need quality, higher standard of quality, but at the same time to guarantee, to secure quantities for everybody.
Okay, do we have time for one more question from the audience, if there is one? Otherwise, yes. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ivana. I work at Aarhus University, International Center for Research in Organic Food Systems. It has been a great pleasure to hear the panel this morning, and in the past days we had meetings of agroecology partnership and future foods partnership nearly back to back in the same city. I think I would just like to share, it's rather sharing than really a question, but maybe somebody from panel will react, that we have certain best practices coming from organic food processing, organic farming, and also agroecology that could bring a number of questions that were mentioned here in a holistic manner as already existing. So there are food companies, farmers that have adopted certain models. I think that also community here has worked numerously on European joint programming using this. So I would just really like to see that we on our agenda see sustainability from various perspectives and include this in the coming agenda, especially across the partnerships that have such big goals and so many challenges and efforts to make this possible. So thank you very much, and yeah, the best practices are there. We try to integrate what is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your intervention there. Did anybody want to come back on this point quickly before we wrap up? No one on the edge of their seat. Oh, and okay.
Just I say that there is, of course, a potential also for more dialogue between the different partnership and what is produced by the different partnership, because we are not going to reinvent the wheel, and some things are already there, and it's just a matter of scaling up and capitalize on what we have. So since it's not silos, but still there is not enough work, even from inside our partnerships. I'm speaking about R&I, but yeah, this is something.
Thank you. So, unless anybody else wants to come in on this point? No, that's fine. I will then give the floor to Gabriella for the last word, perhaps a little summary, wrap-up conclusion of everything that you've heard in this panel, any reflections you have, anything you want to add.
I think too much has been said already to reflect on it in 1 minute. But I think we are here to discuss the results and the future of FOODPath and how to integrate it in future foods, and how the partnership can work, how we can proceed. I think we heard that there are still silos, and defendable silos, but also silos that need to be broken down. The connection between research and innovation, education, science to policy, also there are still challenges, but also there are good examples on how we can proceed and how we can implement that. I think my main takeaway is that there are partnerships, there are governance structures, and for all partnerships there are good examples, but there are also questions on the governance structure, on the funding, and that it has been said before also by you, Hugo also suggested it. How can we learn from each other, that we don't reinvent the wheel, but that we really look at existing partnerships, what works, what doesn't work, and that we try to learn from each other. And I think one other very important issue is the food systems approach that should be the overarching theme for the partnership.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you after the coffee break.
So during the coffee break is the last moment for you to meet the people who have the same puzzle pieces on the pages. And also take time to have a look to the posters and the QR code on the walls to give you access to the toolkit and the FOODPathS quiz. Thank you.
Hello. Yes. Are you? Yeah. Hello. Just a quick 2-minute warning, should we say, that we're about to kick off. I'm going to wait for the last of the stragglers over there to come and sit down, but we're just about to kick off our second panel of today. Thank you.
Damien, we have a small change of role because you are the coordinator. You didn't know that?
Okay, no, it's okay. I was just checking that I wasn't going to introduce. Okay. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to start our next session. So if I could ask everyone to just take a seat. Do you want to be here already? Or you? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you're all caffeinated, ready and raring to go for our next session, which is the last of the festival as well, but the second session of today, last of the festival. All good things must eventually come to an end, sadly, but we've still got a good discussion to come. So, in this final session of the event, slightly different flavour of panellists. We're bringing together representatives from the European institutions, from the Commission, and the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research, or SCAR. And so in this panel session, we're really looking to the future, we're looking to the next steps for FOODPathS, the role it can play in helping to orchestrate all these agri-food stakeholders and bring food systems research projects forward in the coming years. I'll just say that there will be an opportunity to ask questions to our panellists. And there is a Slido. There you go, like magic. There's a Slido here, so you can access the Slido either via the QR code now or also via the hashtag that you can find there. So do keep that in mind as we're going along. If you have any questions that come up, feel free to put them on the Slido and we will get to those towards the end of the session. So let me welcome our panellists. I've already got one here who's keen to start, which is great. That's Rosalinda Scalia, who is Deputy Head of Unit for Bioeconomy and Food Systems in the European Commission's DG Research and Innovation. So welcome, Rosalinda. We also have with us joining on the stage, we have Hugo de Vries, who is the FOODPathS Coordinator and Research Director at INRAE, the French National Institute of Agronomic Research. So welcome, Hugo. We also have with us today Luis Vivas Alegre, who is Head of Sector for Research and Innovation at the European Commission's DG Agri, coordinates Horizon Europe programming in agriculture, forestry and rural development. Luis, welcome to the stage. We also have with us Jonas Lazaro Mojica, who is Policy Officer at the European Commission's DG Grow, where he focuses on agri-food policies. Quite a wealth of experience in the food sector, from food industry and various different backgrounds there on all things agri-food. So welcome, Jonas. And last but certainly not least, hopefully there's another chair. There is. Good, excellent. Silvia Scaramuzzi, who is SCAR Food Systems Working Group and Associate Professor of Agri-Food Economics and Marketing at the University of Florence. She focuses on rural development, food quality, supply chains, and agricultural policies. So excellent, a really lovely mix of different flavors we're bringing here and different DGs as well. It's nice to have three, not one, not two, but three different DG representatives on my panel. So I wanted to start this session. This is obviously a forward-looking panel, but I wanted to maybe, the first round, maybe have a little reflect back on the project, on the outcomes of the project, before we look to move forward. And so perhaps I'll start here on my left with Rosalinda. You know, you've been very involved with this project. We were speaking before, you said kind of a baby of yours, so you're very familiar. But do the outcomes of the project resonate with what the Commission wanted from it? And specifically from your position, from your DG research, you know, does it really chime with what you were hoping to get out of this? And, you know, especially as there's been a very changing circumstances the last few years, maybe a reflection on how the outcomes relate to your current work and current priorities.
Thank you so much, Natasha, and good morning, everyone. Of course, this project is a baby of the Food 2030 R&I policy initiative, and of course, we are all benefiting from our predecessors in every way. You know, in the case of RTD, the Unit Bioeconomy Food Systems, and in the case also of the other actors that are also in this room. So in 2022, we launched a coordinated support action with this aim to have this preparatory action for the Horizon Europe Food System Partnership, because we were aware that it was not an easy task to prepare a partnership for food systems. And this is why there was the need to have FOODPath acting on the ground. So we are very grateful to everything that FOODPath has done until now, especially from the beginning when they made substantial efforts to have a funders forum, so to gather together people that were willing to invest in this project, and it was not an easy task. Then we are also grateful for the side event that FOODPath had during the high-level conference in December 2023 here in Brussels, and that was a good occasion to meet everyone in the family, but to build up, to give force to this action. At the same time, thanks to FOODPath, there was a mobilization of also philanthropic entities. So it was their action that diversified also the community, taking on board newcomers and exploring new possibilities. So everything that has happened until now has been very much valued, and everything started in 2021 or even before with the preparation of this thinking, of this set of mind, and now we are proud to see what has been achieved.
Thank you for kicking us off there. I was going to, no offense, I'm going to skip you, Hugo. We're going to stay with the Commission for now, and then I promise I will come back to you. Luis, the same question to you. I mean, do the outcomes really resonate with the work that with the problems you're facing now, with the work you're trying to solve, with the priorities you have now? How do those outcomes really relate to your priorities right now?
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for having DG Agri in this panel. I think it's really an opportunity to to contribute to this agri-food system dimension of the Commission, not only, but also from the Member States, what we are trying to achieve through the different partnerships, indeed on the food system partnership, animal health and welfare, agroecology, agriculture of data. There is a new partnership on forestry that will be launched soon, and we are looking forward to the opportunities this will bring together. In terms of the context where you are coming from and how you have opportunities to contribute to the agenda, not only research and innovation, but also policy agenda. You are very much aware that the Commission has issued already a couple of months ago the first of its output, the Vision for Agriculture and Food. And there, the Vision for Agriculture and Food, making priorities, of course, for farmers, for rural communities, at the level of policy, also acknowledges where research and innovation and science needs to contribute and must contribute to enable those changes. And I think projects like FOODPathS and the legacy, what is coming now through the partnership, are really contributors to ensure that what is happening at the level of policy is indeed backed up by what's happening at the level of science, and providing research and innovation not only as a complement, but also as a driver of what new knowledge and innovations are needed to support this transition and resilience and sustainability. And I would like also to put the context of competitiveness. We are very much aware that now in the new Commission priorities, competitiveness is high in the agenda, but this competitiveness from a research and innovation side as well. And we cannot have competitiveness unless we have really good innovation supporting the needs of the farmers, of the food industry, of retailers, and even consumers, I would say. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the context there of the competitiveness. I think that links quite maybe nicely to my next speaker, Jonas. Let me come to you. From your perspective there on the legacy of the project, how does this tie into the as we spoke about, competitiveness is the name of the game, the new motto of the Commission. How does it tie into these current priorities, and how do you see this linking with your work?
Well, first, if you allow me, I have to do a declaration of conflict of interest.
Okay.
Because, no, I say this because I was just 3 years ago when this project started, I was involved in the project myself. So that's for you to know that I actually know the project well from the grounds. All this true that the last 2 years I just followed. I'm not part of the project, so I just follow what they did. But I just wanted to say this because I'm in a group of friends and colleagues here, so that's something that I wanted to highlight because I'm very happy to be here today, obviously. That's also something I wanted to say. And on the question to you, I also need to explain why perhaps DGROW is here today, because I know that not always we are the usual actor to see. For different reasons, but perhaps I have to say that we have a food industry unit in DGROW, which is also called textiles, food and retail, so it goes beyond just the food remit. But we have a small subunit that we work especially in the food industry part. We have some of our own initiatives, perhaps the most known is the COSME and Single Market Project initiatives, which are part of DGROW. But also we have other initiatives like one that we have, the Santé, which is the Code of Conduct on Responsible Food Businesses and Marketing Practices. We have also the Path for Skills in Agri-Food that we share with DG Agri and DG Employment. And we also have a third one, which is the Transition Pathways. And on this, I will announce that we are going to launch a platform for food systems soon. And we'll have an event on the 16th of June that will do a web stream. So it will be online. And if you allow me, I will discuss whether we can share this information with the FOODPathS partners. Mm-hmm. So I read my own book and then I answered your question. So as Luis said, obviously we have the Competitiveness Compass launch in January this year. And there obviously the food area is important, but there in that document it already addresses to the vision. So I have to say that there is a high interlink between the two documents. And I think it is quite interesting that the vision itself is a document for agri-food from a strategic point of view. And that's why I think what is in the vision is really the mandate to come. And really this approach for food systems, which is something I think embedded in the FOODPathS, is important. And perhaps, and I finished it here, for me, what FOODPathS brings is really a very interesting number of partners and actors that usually don't work that easily together. And I think FOODPathS was a very good pilot to bring all these actors together. And I leave it here because I will think.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, interesting. A number of policy initiatives mentioned already. I'm going to dig into those later. But yes, thank you for setting that. You're right, DG Grow is not always one that comes on my panels. It's very nice to have you here, especially in this whole kind of focus on entrepreneurship in the agri-food sector. So Sylvia, perhaps I come to you now on the legacy of the project. We've just heard from the Commission how it ties into their work, how they see it useful in their day-to-day. How do you see the kind of legacy of the project? Does everything we heard here chime with you? How does that resonate with you?
So first of all, thanks a lot for the kind invitation. I really feel honored, and I must say a little moved and excited at the same time about being here, because I participated to the whole process of creation of the partnership and the SRIA that was behind it. So actually I was at the time getting into the SCAR food system working group, and I participated to the works that were being developed, and now I am part of the executive board of Future Foods, and also co-leading one of the work packages that is on the strategic research and innovation agenda. So as you might understand, I really feel the legacy as fundamental. I feel something like a duty of enabler of all what has been designed in order to put it into practice within the Future Foods partnership. So let's see if we are up to the role, but I think I had the opportunity to participate into many meetings of FOODPathS project, although I'm not a member. So this allowed me to follow the whole process and to try to understand as much as possible how we can then implement it into the Future Foods partnership. So let's see.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Hugo, let me come to you now. The project has also been your baby as well, as a coordinator. How do what we've heard here chime with your experience of what you think the legacy of the project is?
Now, first of all, I'd like to thank the very kind words of the other panelists. Really appreciate it. And it fits quite well with what I've asked and heard also by the people in the audience. A lot of people say that this is an environment where you can talk with people who are working in other sectors, who are working for other kind of stakeholders, and it's a kind of learning experience. I think that is maybe the most important part of FOODPathS. Did it start like this? The answer is no, not at all. I remember when we started with a small group, we put up front, talking about sustainable food systems, all kind of very complex scientific words. And somebody asked me, are you going to create a partnership for 3 people in Europe? I said, this is the complete wrong wording. And I think then we started to realize if you like to develop also a scientific agenda, you cannot do it only as a group of scientists. You need to do it with the others who are implicated in one way or the other, either in the action parts of it or either in the problem part of it. So you need to create an agenda that is understandable but co-written by all the actors that are involved. Then the second question came, okay, create, and that was also an initiative of the Commission, and I was extremely happy with the question and unhappy at the same time, be as inclusive as possible. And in the beginning they said you need to build an inclusive partnership. I said impossible. So just forget it. We cannot be inclusive. We cannot include all the people in Europe in this. Impossible. But what we can do is try to have very different organizations being involved. And that is, I think, what we read. And even we could go one step further, not by just meeting each other and trying to respect each other, but the building blocks that now are created, far from perfect, for sure. New elements need to be discussed, criticized, maybe made more
adapted to the different contexts, but those building blocks are all created by the actors in the different sectors. And now even in the 3 days, some groups were not even yet involved. So we need to go even further, and hopefully in the future they will be also involved. But I think this co-construction of our building blocks, I think that is the most valuable part of FOODPathS, and the way it is created is also for me in a very positive and constructive manner. That is also a very positive point, and I really like to thank all the people who has contributed to that.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, and we'll definitely get into the kind of future, how we can build on this a little bit more throughout the panel. But firstly, perhaps I want to make a point here where we're talking a lot about partnerships, how we can work together, and you know, as I said, we have not one, not two, but 3 different DGs here. I think it would be remiss of me not to ask a little bit about how you also work together within the Commission, because it's not just an external or between the external partners, but also as a food systems approach, also within policy making within the Commission. I think that's quite an interesting point. So perhaps I will start with Rosalinda, as you're next to me. A little comment about how you work together with the other DGs and how you bring this kind of thinking within in food systems thinking within policy making, and how you've seen the evolution of that, where you see maybe there's more potential to explore some synergies there.
Thank you for the question. So first I will start operationally speaking, focusing on Horizon Europe, how we work together within Horizon Europe. That is this 7-year program from 21 to 27 that is ending, let's say. So with the programming side, we have the approach that we call co-creation, the co-creation approach between different DGs, different services inside the Commission. And within Horizon Europe Cluster 6, we have 3 called co-chairs. So RTD, DG Environment and DG Agri are the co-chairs that steer the discussion under Horizon Europe Cluster 6, but that consult all the other DGs in a co-creation process. So operationally speaking, we, the Secretariat, what we call the Secretariat of Cluster 6, meets every week. Luis, remember, we were part of the group. I was part of that group. We continue to have weekly discussions, daily exchanges. So it's not something abstract. It's something that is part of our daily work. And then when we call for co-creation meeting, Jonas is invited, all the colleagues from DG Sante, DG Klima are all invited, even trade, depending on the topic. So it's inclusive in this sense, and it takes place in a very constructive dialogue where all the different policies interests, let's say, if we want to use this wording, are reflected in the discussions, and at the end of the day, a compromise is found in the interest of the R&I strategic approach that we have for us. So this is operationally speaking what is currently happening under Horizon Europe. We are now, we just published the work program 2025. This is the week where the info days took place. It's been a very busy week, and we were all part of this information sessions for applicants. Today, as an example, I'm going to have a meeting, an inter-service coordination group meeting with our colleagues, other colleagues of other DGs, just to share information on the food system partnership, where we are, where the partnership is, what kind of input we can provide, how we can contribute. So it's really something that happens on the ground every day, and maybe other can confirm or complement what I just shared with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Luis, would you like to confirm or complement the talk there? Maybe how about DG, from your perspective of DG Agri, how does that?
Thank you. And no, I think indeed Linda has really provided a very nice framework on how we make sure that when we come to the partnerships in terms of our participation in the governing boards, we're able to speak with one voice. That's the intention, so that we're able to come and say, okay, we are policy brokers in different areas, in different DGs. We're responsible for different policy files to make proposals to member states, of course. We're a body that makes proposals. And in the background, when we come to the partnerships, we really want, as Rosalinda mentioned, to be well coordinated in that sense. I would like also to point at other type of brokers, are the knowledge brokers in the around the institutional environment. And in our case, in this type of partnerships, we have evidently the involvement of agencies like the European Food Safety Authority or the European Medicines Agency, that in some of the partnerships, they are really actors themselves. And to that end, it's also good to acknowledge that we need coordination with those knowledge brokers that are able to provide, in some policy areas, this science to policy interface. So I would like also to bring credit and acknowledgement to the need to make this coordination not only at the level of policy, but also at the level of knowledge broking, and how to ensure that we come together making a systems approach also to policy development and bringing coherence to what we think. At the end, what we come to the partnerships with is mainly try to advise on the EU added value, where is the coherence with EU policies, always understanding that research and innovation needs a freedom of space to operate. But of course, our role is basically to provide this policy advice and this knowledge advice in order to connect with policy with the agencies.
Yeah. Jonas, let me come to you now. I mean, Luis makes an interesting point there, you know, about also looking more externally. I mean, feel free to compliment if you want to talk about the interconnection of the DGs, feel free. But also, I'm wondering how you've seen the evolution, or how you see the evolution of the Commission working with also external actors in this ecosystem that we just spoke about, including those that have maybe smaller voices as well, how they interface with the Commission, how you've seen that evolve, how you think that will evolve in the coming mandate, in the coming years.
Okay, I get the tricky question from that,
yeah.
for this part. Okay. No, first I would like to say that clearly I think there is a big effort, at least from the Commission, to work first jointly with us to speak as a single voice. And I have to say from my own experience that I'm involved almost in any single piece of policy that is there. We are related to actually at least to see, discuss, comment. And I think this is something that is embedded in the Commission in this mandate. And I would like to refer to Luis to the word co-creation, which is, I think, we're trying to say. So we try to co-create with all the relevant actors. And I have to say this is a lot of work. I think we sometimes don't understand how much work this word co-creation entails, because really to reach all the actors, to get all the opinions, to find the balance, is really a work in itself, and I think that's something that to highlight. And then, as you gave me a word on the unusual actors, obviously I have to say that for SMEs, I think it's one of the most difficult actors to reach out, because SMEs, at least in food systems, they are the 99% of the industrial sector, but also in farming, also you have an enormous amount of SMEs. But usually, it's very difficult to gauge them one by one, and the problem is that they don't cluster themselves that easily. So then how do you get the voice of the SMEs, the needs of the SMEs? It's something that I think even in FOODPathS has been discussed widely, but also in the Commission we discuss widely, especially in DGRO, but I think in all the DGs, because at the end it's something that worries us a lot. Also because as it was discussed before, I think Geert mentioned it, when you work with big actors, it's easier to see their opinion and their needs, but when you go really more granular, it's quite difficult to get their needs, and sometimes are slightly different, and that's something that is difficult to grasp. Now, saying this, I have to say that we try to use different tools, obviously reaching the different associations, food federations, clusters. When you are talking about innovation, in the DGRO, we have the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. We have another network which is called the European Enterprise Network, which are attempts precisely to reach as many SMEs that we can, but I have to say that still there is a lot of work to do there. It's an ongoing work, and I think in FOODPathS they already had a lot of discussions on this and also in future foods, but I will leave it there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, really, I mean, that's definitely an avenue that needs to be explored further, I suppose, the SMEs. That's a really good point. And staying on that point of kind of synergies to be exploited further, maybe I'll come to you, Sylvia, now for a comment on that. And I know as well, you know, the partnership on sustainable food systems is just one of many partnerships. Perhaps you can also talk about how you can exploit partnerships within partnerships. It sounds a bit meta, doesn't it? But partnership between the different partnerships, and where you see really the potential for exploiting more synergies beyond.
We are working a lot on that in Future Foods because we really feel the need of coordination, which means on the one side, networking for avoiding duplications, but on the other side, really valuing the synergies that can be found between the different research and innovation areas. And there we are really working deeply side by side with some of the partnerships already. For example, I was invited by the Resilience Cultural Heritage Partnership in construction. So already before it's constructed to drive them on the basis of our faults, of our also achievements in order to design some of the activities and specifically the additional activities they are designing, so just accompanying their process. And also, of course, this is because food is a fundamental part of the heritage, and so there was a direct connection also in thematic areas. But we strongly believe that there are other partnerships with which we can have synergies, and it's obviously with the agriculture of data partnership, and specifically because we are building an observatory and we really want to synergize with the work they are doing, and of course with agroecology. Fortunately, we have members of the agroecology partnership that are also in our partnership, Future Foods, and of course having a coherent approach, which means that one of the building blocks that is not within the Future Food Partnership can somehow enter and be valued in its activity is fundamental. So we really are working on that, and we have a specific task within one of the work packages that is dedicated to that. So we strongly believe that this can be possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hugo, let me bring you on. You've actually got a microphone there if you want to use it. We can have, there we go. Might make things simpler. Let me bring you in on this point. I mean, Sylvia there mentioned agroecology, but there are others maybe looking more widely to health, animal health, water, circular economy. Where do you see this potential here for the partnerships within partnerships?
Already the easy answer is, if you're talking about sustainable food systems, you cannot without agroecology, you cannot without blue economy, you cannot without animal health and welfare. Water for all, very important, circular bio-based Europe. If we're talking about our renewable resources and co-products, that also needs to be valorized and very important source for new employment or incomes. So we need to work with all of those. On the other hand, we also realize that we are increasing the complexity, the number of actors, etc. But therefore, I first like to go with also a reflection on how I see as an outsider what happens in the Commission and how the interactions between the Commission are now going to help us. When I started, and I was quite fortunate that I've been involved in quite some European projects. The first was an S3, that's a little bit aside, but then also working with the European Space Agency, and there you have seen there are already many different groups of the European Commission involved. So working together is very common in the Commission. That's right. But then the food sector is extremely big, and so all the units also have their workloads, which are, I presume, as an outsider, already far too much. And then they are now confronted with, in the time, they have set up all kind of partnership models. The ETP was mentioned, linked to the National Technology Platform. Then came the integrated projects and networks of excellence. Also all kind of partnership models with different actors, public, private, and so on. And I have seen that there was a little bit an isolation in the different departments, and now I see the interconnections are coming rapidly back. And I was extremely happy when the Commission decided we need to have a huge investment, and it's a huge investment, in partnerships, co-funded, co-programmed, institutionalized. And Also that at the same time the Commission then set up those related working groups, I think that was a very, very good strength. If that allows to also set up a task force that is going to make the bridges between the different partnerships, I think they have now all the means to do it because they have the connections between DG Sante, Agri, etc. So I think they can, if they are willing to set up this task force to build the bridges, not only leave it in the hands of the SCAR foresight. That is fantastic in terms of advice and ideas, etc., but it needs to be a hands-on action group and task force, or who can take the things in hand, really in hand, because that is maybe the best lesson that I've learned with FOODPathS. The question is not about do we need transitions and is this topic important? Yeah, we all know. But how to do it, that is maybe the most important, and how to do it between all those partnerships. Now that's a huge challenge, and you need to have a group of people who have the capacity to do it. And maybe I should suggest to ask a group of management sciences. I've learned a lot in the past from Michael Porter from Harvard on how to manage clusters, etc. And he was honest. He said the clusters were there and then I've studied them. But I think we need to have those lessons learned from those people, how to organize this in the best way. I think the Commission will be served with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Rosalinda, maybe I come to you now, staying on the theme of lessons learned there and the partnerships. I mean, you've already touched upon how FOODPathS contributed to the success of the Future Foods partnership. But do you have anything to add to that, to build on it, and how do you see this moving? And moving towards the future? How do we build on this? Hugo mentioned there this task force. How do you see building on that success of the partnership?
Sure, yes. Not taken about this idea to set up a task force. And regarding the lessons learned, I can, of course, make the point that Horizon 2020 has been evaluated. There has been the publication of the ex-post evaluation of Horizon 2020, and we recently saw the evaluation of Horizon Europe with some outstanding successes there highlighted, but also with room for improvement, as in any framework that is set up. And for example, the RTD, of course, is working on the simplification of this framework, because this was highlighted as a need from the communities, and also for expanding for having more newcomers to the programs. So we are reflecting on these outcomes, and we are seeing how these outcomes can be also reflected for the future in what will come next. So this lessons learned process will feed into the new multi-annual financial framework that will be published in July, around the 16th of July, and that will set the basis, of course, for the form of the next framework program, what we normally call FP10. We will see how it will be featuring inside the multi-annual financial framework right after the publication of the multi-annual financial framework. So the reflections are ongoing, and this is all these kind of discussions are very valuable, because there is the need to simplify. What does simplification mean? It means also rationalization of all the tools that we have, of the numbers of partnerships that are shaping the scientific scenario, the cluster 6 scenario today, but that tomorrow maybe will take a different shape. We are in this reflection mode, and in this reflection mode, of course, let's not forget the importance of science that has been given also in very high-level public events, like the Sorbonne summit that took place the 5th of May in Paris, where the president of the Commission called for choose Europe, choose science, so that our current framework program can be a magnet also for talents from abroad or from EU talents that left the EU that want to come back. And the same we should do for companies companies for them to be competitive enough in Europe, and this links to the previous to the beginning of the speech of Louis' speeches. So R&I as a central and pivotal tool for competitiveness, and we are learning in this process and we are reflecting. So many things will come up in the coming months, and maybe I will mention some other activity, some other policy initiatives later on.
Yes, happily. Let's dig into the policy initiatives as we're here already. There is actually a question from the audience about the FP10, so I'm going to come back to that later. But before we do, I do think you raise an interesting point here. There is a bit of a tension because food systems are inherently very complex. I think Hugo demonstrated that very well. You know, we've all talked about these partnerships, and yet simplification is really the main name. One of them is competitiveness, simplification. They're part of the main names of the game when it comes to this now new mandate of the Commission. Louise, let me come to you. I mean, in the previous mandate, there was talk of a sustainable food systems law, and that never came to be, and it potentially, we can go into that a bit if you want, because it was very complex to manage. So maybe can you talk a little bit to what can be done now, and how we move forward with this kind of thinking in the current thinking of simplification and moving forward with the complexity of food systems, and talk a little bit to the future of this kind of thinking of the sustainable food systems law.
Well, I may think this is indeed a very interesting question on a kind of policy context in which we are still moving. So the Green Deal, of course, is still in the agenda, as you saw in the political priorities of the Commission, and the implementation of the Green Deal is now the priority. Perhaps one of the novelties I would like to signal in the context of creating strategies and approaches and visions in our sector, in agriculture and food, was how this was prepared in the context of the strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture in the European Union. And there, one of the novelties is something that somehow was happening already in the research and innovation context, which was the co-creation among all interested parties. A bottom-up approach. Bring together in a room those taking out their institutional hats, because the experts that contributed to the strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture and food came on their own capacity, even though they were directors and high-level people coming from big institutions, not institutions in the sense of the institutions, but EU bodies of stakeholders. And they came to discuss around the table with different interests. I'm more into supporting farmers, I'm more into supporting the environment, I'm more into supporting consumers, and provide advice on which they would consensuate. So this was, in my opinion, one of the elements that, or perhaps the main element that we need to take into account on how the vision for agriculture and food has been prepared, making this consultation. In terms of the future and the actions, how this will follow up and new legislative initiatives, there are still legislation, I believe, being discussed at the level of the Council and the Parliament that is still relevant for sustainable food systems, that comes from the farm to fork, let's call it, from the Green Deal. And that still needs to be seen how it will evolve. There are new announcements, for example, also in our sector, like developing a new strategic approach to research and innovation in agriculture, forestry and rural areas, which is part of the vision, and that will be materialized in the coming months, years. It's still something that we are discussing, the planning of the actions of the vision for agriculture and food. And I would like to also mention on the learning for the future, and notice somehow that, coming back to the context of the partnerships, that the partnerships themselves are still babies, in my opinion. We tend to rush a lot into try to make informed assessments to improve. We're still generating knowledge, I guess, on how the partnerships work. How old is the oldest partnership of Horizon Europe in Cluster 6? 3 years old, probably? How old are the food-related partnerships that we have in the program? 2 years old, maybe around that? So it's still something that we need to learn in terms of how to improve. And in my opinion, okay, make adjustments where needed with the evidence is coming through, but still understanding that this is an iterative process, that the partnerships are starting, still have a long way. There are now opportunities to move to a stronger cooperation. It would be very difficult, in my opinion, to expect that after 1-2 years of work, the partnership would be fully integrated in a common vision. I'm going just to throw a challenge. Why not to ensure that the strategic research and innovation of agendas of the partnerships are the place for ensuring this coherence? Because at the end, those are the elements that reflect back down to the partnership activities. So this kind of learnings is still something I believe we need to acknowledge that we are in a very still early stage, in a baby stage of the partnerships. And of course, for speaking for FP10, it's something that is still very far away even. So we are perhaps still in the momentum of learning and then perhaps evolving as we learn and generate more evidence on how to improve.
Okay, so in the baby phase, but there's space to grow. And talking about grow, let's go to DG Grow. That's one of my worst segues, I think, but that's fine. Luis mentioned there that there's still this Green Deal thinking, that we're still moving ahead with the Green Deal. But from my perspective, what I see is there's been a real shift from green to clean. There's a lot of clean. Talk about clean industrial deal, clean. That seems to be more of the key word than green at the moment. Maybe I can bring you in here in terms of your thinking of how that will shape conversations on food systems going forward, and of course, Luis mentioned the vision there. How is this helping to shape the evolution of policy thinking over this course of this mandate?
Okay, so you referred to the Clean Industrial Deal that was managed by DG Grow, clearly, and I have to say this is obviously a relevant document, but from my point of view, it's quite horizontal from the perspective of agri-food. So really, it includes many things like energy, materials, machinery, which are relevant for the food systems, but sometimes they are not direct, because for that we have clearly the vision, which has more focus on the agri-food sector itself. But still there are elements there that are relevant, the same as I said that the competitiveness compass is also relevant, because many of these documents came from previous reports, like perhaps you're familiar with the Draghi report, and the Ninister report, and the Letta report on the single market, and all those, well, obviously, and the strategic dialogue for agriculture and food, and all those shape all these different documents that came in the latest 5 months, which are kind of shaping the landscape for this Commission mandate. And obviously, this Clean Industrial Deal is very relevant, but still we have to see how it will impact the food systems in the different areas, because really food systems, one of the issues or advantages that we have is that the long chains are very long, but also the diversity is very high. So really we have almost like a three-dimensional matrix where you have complexities on the value chain, where you have the input from farmers up to the consumers on the retail sector and the food industry. Then you have differences among countries on the speed that they pick up innovation, for example, or they run through policies. And also, when we talk about food and you consider sectors, I think it's very wide. So when you talk about other sectors, for example, well, I cannot point out any, but some of them are more direct, whereas here in food, it's not the same to speak about wheat crops than to speak of cans of tuna, than to speak about, you name it, any products that are in the market that come from very different value chains and streams with different kind of B2B and intermediates before ingredients were mentioned, which is also very important for our sector. So really very few things goes directly from farm to fork. So it's a very long pathway until you get there. So that's, I mean, I was getting a bit away from your question, as you see, but I wanted to reflect on this point of food systems complexity, because I think it's one of the best points that FOODPathS started to discuss. And also, I think is quite relevant for the discussion that we are having, because I think at EU level, we have started to discuss food systems, and we use the word more and more, but I don't think it's something that has gone through all the way to all the stakeholders and all the actors to understand the complexities on the interlinkages that are all around. Something that might happen on policy legislation on plastics, for example, will affect enormously, perhaps, the food industry that works with food contact materials at any stage.
Yeah.
Just to put an example, I don't want to point out to anything, but just to put an example.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think the food systems thinking is definitely trickling through. Even in media as well, when I try and put it in titles, now the editors are okay with it. But a few years ago, they were not. We don't want food systems. We don't know what that means. We don't want it in a title. So I see a evolution happening there. Rosalinda, let me come to you now on we've spoken a lot about the research, the innovation elements here. In the vision and the vision for agri-food, vision for the future of agriculture and food. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the recent and upcoming European, research and innovation policy initiatives within the vision for agri-food? Also, there are a few, innovation elephants in the room. We've already spoken about cultivated meat, genetic technologies. There are things on the horizon coming in terms of policies. Can you speak a little bit to this point?
Yes, thank you so much. It's also complex. The policy environment at this moment, it's as complex as the food systems. But we need to guarantee coherence there, and we have the good tools to do so. So the EU Vision for Agriculture and Food has been published recently in February, and as Luis said, there is a chapter there for a strategic R&I approach for agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. What we need to make sure here is that we also put forward a research and innovation strategic approach for food systems. Let's see what kind of instruments we have coming ahead that are part of the Commission work program for between 24 and 29 that have been presented by our president. So, for example, the 2nd of July, we will publish the life science strategy that will take the shape of an umbrella strategy. It's led by our commissioner, Zarajeva, that is Commissioner for Startup, Research and Innovation. So we recently closed the call for evidence, but there was a call for evidence for that, a consultation. And on the other hand, we are still on time for a call for evidence, a consultation for the bioeconomy strategy that will be open until the 23rd of June. So also there, given how broad are the issues that have an influence on food systems, that strategy, the bioeconomy strategy, is a good way for addressing some of the needs that we have in food systems, the deployment of solutions that we need on the ground. That would be a great opportunity for the update of a strategy that already exists, but that needs to be put to be updated, and that will happen by the end of the year. So let's use this call for evidence as an opportunity there, also to address those elephants in the room, because research and innovation is well placed to address things that are uncomfortable for other institutions, for other services, also within the Commission. The final and ultimate goal of science is to move forward and to provide also several options. The more options we have on the table, the more resilient are our food systems, because sustainability and resilience of food systems are not put at the second level. They are still our main interest, of course. And the more options we provide for consumers, the more freedom at the end of the day we have as citizens. So it's really a high-level reflection that we need here, that can touch sometimes sensitiveness that are not easy to address. In the previous panel, there was a discussion on citizen or consumers, or the role of consumers. There was a discussion on how policymakers can use research and innovation results to have more robust policies. But at the end of the day, we have also to reflect on our politicians. What's the narrative that our politicians need to convince people, and how these short-term needs can be seen in a wider perspective. I know that I'm just repeating things that we are all aware of, but sometimes it's useful for us to raise again awareness on the fact that we work together as a Commission with Member States. At the end, many regulations are just voted by Member States, and if we cannot make it through, it's not because it's the Commission that doesn't want to. Sometimes it's because the whole system is not going toward that direction. So within everything in mind, I can just confirm the commitment of research and innovation for tackling all possible issues that our scientists and researchers can address within the collaborative research, but also with more innovative and breakthrough research that are currently part of Pillar 3, for example, of Horizon Europe.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. Hugo, let me come to you now. I mean, we're sat with three policymakers from the different DGs. I wanted to hear from you. I mean, looking at the challenges that the EU food sector is facing today, I'd like to get a word from you about what the main priorities should be with respect to policy actions, collaborative actions. It actually links to a question I've got. I am seeing your questions from Slido, don't worry. I can see them coming in, and we will have a chance to ask questions. But someone has asked where the most urgent areas are where European, national, regional policymakers need to step in to maintain the momentum of food paths and avoid fragmentation. So perhaps you can also speak to that and give your view on the kind of main priorities we should be looking at today.
Wow, that's not an easy question or a series of questions. But Luis already helped me a lot. So he already proposed that there will be a FOODPathS 2. So thanks a lot, Luis, because we are only at the beginning of understanding how partnerships function. We have been spending 3 years, and we realize how complex it is and how much time we in fact need to better understand how it's not just a partnership, but partnerships in different contexts function. So I'm extremely in favor. We are only at the beginning of understanding. We have some a little bit older examples, as Prima already for 7 years. We have Circular Bio-Based Europe, but that's an institutionalized one, or another article 185 or 7 one. So it's a little bit different, but we can learn a lot from them. And I think we should continue on that road. So that, I think, is a priority. The second priority, and that is also what Linda said, I think for the gap between, let's say, research and policy making, and Niels is working a lot on it, and the Ghent group, and there is a big gap, but you can address it in different ways. I think that the current partnerships are not equipped to address this adequately, to be very honest. We have one, ERT Food, who is another one coming out of the knowledge innovation communities, really focus on innovation. We have now one who is much more focused on research, Future Foods, and thanks to Future Foods, we have an alignment with member states that's already fantastic. But it's a focus on research, and of course it connects via research to the others, but the focus is on it. Then we have, thanks to Jonas, we have one who is now focusing on education and skills. But we don't have one which has as a first starting point policies. And not only policies to align them at the Commission level or the European level, but we have heard from ICLAI, from ERIA, from the FAO, from the World Wildlife Fund, that policy alignment at all the different skills with all the different actors is really necessary. So to have a large investment in that, I think, is necessary for the understanding how partnerships of those different actors could function and bring forward a better alignment of policies, but then connected, of course, again, not working in silos, even though I also understand we need to keep our pillars because otherwise we fall. So we need to have at least some of our pillars. But I think as a starting point, one on policies may make sense. Do we need to call it a partnership or a large initiative or etc.? That's up to the Commission, of course, but I think it's... And then the third one, which I think is very important, and Kathleen Toth, she is working from for the Joint Research Centers, and she is co-responsible for the dashboard, if I'm correct, for sustainable food systems. She already yesterday said it, and I know some people in the audience are highly in favor of this, and also Linda just said it. We need to have a conceptual framework on basis of which we are monitoring, but also take our actions in partnerships. And do we have that? We have maybe some pictures of schemes, how things are connected, but we have no idea how they really function. I'm coming a little bit, but I'm a very amateur in this area. I'm coming a little bit out of the complex system area. And if you look to the largest institutes in the world, the Santa Fe, but also the Institute of Complex Systems, the Global Organization for Complex Systems, they have been starting out of a physics mathematics point of view, then they address ecology issues, the functioning of ecosystems, very important, then financial systems, but agri-food is not addressed by them. It is not even a tape. If you ask the director of the European Institute for Complex Systems based in Vienna, he said, we are now starting to work with value chains. But I said, we are already far beyond that. And so to really develop a conceptual framework with people from that area, and even we maybe touch a little bit on it, but we are no expert, to be very honest. I haven't seen many of them in these contexts, a few, but I think we need to unite them to build with the GRCs, not without the GRC, but really with the GRCs, a very sound basis. That's my third priority.
Excellent, thank you very much. Sylvia, let me bring you in on the same point. Anything to add or complement to what Hugo said in terms of the priorities?
Well, I support what Hugo is saying, although I must say some of the things he said are being carried out in the Future Foods Partnership, actually. First of all, I wanted to reinforce the idea as a challenge that was put forward before in the previous panel of the need of really implementing this food system approach and where should it be implemented, where we have the RIPE framework that I really like a lot. Actually, the research, innovation, policy and education framework, I think it's still a bit too much in silos. So I think we should make it more systemic and try to understand how the different pillars can connect to each other in a sort of systemic and virtual process. As for aligning research and innovation, really, I must say that this is possible by fostering transdisciplinary projects, of course, by supporting co-created innovation. Is this really possible? Well, I must say that I have my own experiences at territorial level. I have been supporting very many operational groups where we really work in a systemic way, transferring innovation to the farmers that actually manifest their needs in a bottom-up approach. And then we also involve the policymaker in our meetings so that they know how the operational groups work and how we can synergically reach the goals that we have identified. So I think that we can also in this way strengthen the science policy and I would say society interfaces. This is important and we are working on that in the partnership. We have a specific work package on that, and I must say there is a very high interest not only within the partnership but out of the partnership in that. With Niels we are organizing tomorrow a workshop. We thought we would have like 10-15 participants and we had to close registrations because we have 100 registered people and we really are eager to know how we can manage the whole process, but really we are happy about that. So in synthesis, what I would like to say is that we really can implement this framework. We need to implement it by committing ourselves in a long-term coordination for an inclusive governance and knowledge sharing that is the one I was exemplifying before. Thank you.
Well, it's definitely a good problem to have too many people wanting to come and talk about this issue. Right, so we do have a few questions from the floor. I think I saw at the back there first. I'll take this one, and there's two here at the front. If you could just say your name, who your question's to, and try and keep your question nice and short. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Congratulations to FOODPathS to making this multi-actor dialogue. I think that's necessary for inclusivity. My name is Nasser Rehani from Leibniz Institute in Germany. I'm also working at Future Foods Partnership. So my question goes to the panel, but feel invited to pick up the question. It's about the synergies among the partnership under Cluster 6. So don't you think, just I'm making an argument and would be happy to hear your perspective. Don't you think that Future Foods is in a very unique position to really bring other partnerships together and having this strong synergy with, plus having also cross-cluster also synergies, not only under Cluster 6, but also in Cluster 1 with health, Cluster 2 with culture and inclusive societies, and beyond as well. And also, Future Foods could bring the citizens on board, not consumers, but also citizens on board, as we eat 3 times per day, and it's really tangible, and it affects our pocket. So my question is to you, don't you think Future Foods could take a bold position to harmonize and not wait for organic synergy, but to support the Commission with more bottom-up coordination and for a more mission-oriented approach regarding the investment, regarding all the mobilization and so on. So that's the question about the vision for Future Foods.
All right, thank you very much. Who's going to tackle this one? Who wants to chew on this one? You go, Rosalinda? Yeah? The microphone's there.
I cannot speak for Future Foods representatives, but since we found under Cluster 6 Future Food, it's worth to remind that this partnership, as it was said before, have a long life ahead of them, and they can also help in this transition from a framework program to another. So they are very powerful tools to somehow pave the way for new needs and new actions, but also to guarantee continuity. So this is true for Future Foods, of course, but also for other partnerships. And of course, since we financed it, we will be happy to see as many possible actions to be performed by Future Foods. But there are also some limitations in the framework, in the governance of the partnership that I'm aware of, but that I leave the others to explain. I just wanted to acknowledge the importance of the long-term lives of partnerships in this scenario. But others are more...
Yeah. Did you, Sylvia?
Yeah, Sylvia, please.
Yeah. I'm very happy you are so optimistic about the role the partnership can play. Actually, I feel many constraints to reach all these goals. And I had promised I wouldn't talk about money because I was taught it's not nice. But here I have to do so. Actually, we have constraints. The partnership doesn't have a large funding that allows it to play so many roles and play on so different playing grounds. So I think we really need also what Hugo was saying. We need some new tools that may play this coordination role as a mandate. So we can help, but certainly we are not able with our forces to reach all the goals that you were nicely identifying.
You want to go, of course.
Yeah, of course I can also not talk for future food. It was also a decision that I remain in FOODPathS to try to help and bring elements that are hopefully useful, but that's up to future foods to say, and also what is their capacity to do what and what to prioritize. So we only bring the elements. But I fully agree with Sylvia's answer, and also Linda already also said it, there is a kind of context in which you operate. I think you should not expect things. You need to remain really realistic. We have seen with a minor budget, now 5 million euros is not nothing, of course, but we have already seen how complex it is in a variety of actors that is working in a part of food systems to build bridges, to build something common, etc. If Future Food is going to do that for all the activities, I think it is over-asked. I think we can accept, of course, if the budget from somewhere is falling off the sky, which will be tripled or tenfold, then we have another discussion. But I think otherwise, Sylvia is absolutely right. I think the intention of the people is a different one. They want. We have seen that in our discussions. All people want to talk with the agroecologists because we are all concerned about the sustainability of our food system. But we need to remain, I think, realistic.
Okay, hope that answered your question. We've got two at the front. Yes, I'd give the microphone next to you.
I need the microphone. Okay, so this is Niels Herberg from Aarhus University. So as someone who's actually coordinated our science advice for more than 10 years, and also coordinating now the development that we try to do in agroecology partnership and future foods, I'd like to put some considerations on the table and hear your reactions. And I heard you refer to science advice, Luis. So first of all, I want to say that we should, I mean, it sounds like we are all in this nice partnership, and we just by discussing a bit, we all agree and have the same interest. And I think everybody honestly know that that's not the case. There are huge differences in positions on how to develop the future. Even what are the challenges of current food systems aren't there, and the current change in the narratives of the Commission that you presented also. Now it's not green, it's clean. Now it's not so much the green transition, it is competitiveness, and there are good reasons for that. That's beyond me to question that. I just want to point that the whole basis narrative behind when we started the partnerships have actually also changed. So should the partnership focus change? And I think Dana can confirm that one of the things we have discussed here, or was mentioned especially as a future point, is the cell-based food can replace maybe and be more sustainable than current livestock production. But I think Dana can support that this is not an uncontroversial question in Copa-Cocheca, at least. Huh? I know, coming from a country that heavily invests in that, even if we have also a very traditional intensive livestock production. So just to mention one example. So my question is actually, now we are trying in these partnerships to develop a better way of providing research-based advice to policymakers, not only to the Commission, but to the member states, national, regional levels, that can cover this complexity and need for policy coherence. So that's one thing, those are the practices. And then should we go from a science policy interface to a science policy society interface and negotiate our science advice with Copa-Cocheca or with Cargill or the industry? Or should we remain more like a secluded science-based advice for you? So I'd like some reflections from the Commission. Okay. How do you actually see the future of science advice? And should it reflect mostly the new narrative and always go with the new narrative? Or should science advice also stay with some of the controversial issues, which are not necessarily the wish list for the civil servants, the politicians at the time?
Thank you very much for that question. Okay, I don't know who wants to take this and start. Maybe Luis, is that for you to start with? And then we can see who else wants to bite on that.
Thank you very much, Niels. As usual, very interesting questions you pose in many different contexts. And And here I believe the answer, in my opinion, is both. So you need both, yeah. So I believe we need to acknowledge that in a science for policy context, there are two aspects there. Is first of all, what is the policy question that the scientists are faced with and need to address? But also at the same time, where is the science base that can support informing new policies? The current scenario, as you well describe, is looking into geopolitical context, trade context, how Europe should strengthen its capacity to deliver on food security. But at the same time, as you see, there is a diversification approach as well. When it's about, I'm coming from agriculture, and there are always these questions about lab-grown meat, or cell culture-based meat, better said. And there, of course, when asking at the general policy context, you would say, okay, but we need indeed the evidence that that solution is at least as sustainable as livestock, for example. Then is the question of consumers. Should we, or should policymakers convince consumers? Or should consumers be convinced by the evidence provided, which in my opinion is the actual issue? Where is the evidence to convince consumers? We live in a constant change, in my opinion. If you look at the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy 5 years ago, now there are developments, there are still legislative initiatives that are in the pipeline coming from the Farm to Fork strategy. It's not forgotten. So the aspects related to the new genomic techniques are still being discussed, for example, and there are new initiatives that will come from the vision for agriculture and food. And I think the role of the researchers and the scientists is on both directions, is to listen to what is, because the policy appetite at the end does not come from somebody sitting in a crystal tower stating, I want this to happen. It's a collection of evidence from citizens. No, we are voting, we are electing as an individual, as a citizen, and that evidence informs the policy proposals. But the researchers, in my opinion, need to be on both places, need to listen to that, to ensure that whatever policy advances are backed up by science, and at the same time, of course, provide recommendations. This is something that we need to acknowledge, that is the freedom of research, and is something that we need to secure in the European Union, I believe, strongly.
Okay.
But again, taking into account the will of the citizens, which is transformed into policy making. And on both ways, I think, is where my reply I would like to pose. And I would like to tell Hugo that if it were about me and I would have the money, definitely I would continue to invest as much as possible, not only in your partnership, but also in all partnerships that really can contribute to policy making and also to bring new policy questions as well. Thank you.
There you go, securing the funding. Anyone else want to come in? Jonas, did you want to talk to this, or should we move to the next question? Anyone? Hugo, did you want to come in on this? And yeah.
Yeah, but I also, Niels, and you know much better as I the topic, and I fully agree with Louis' answer. And you added something in a recent workshop. It's an up and down process. It's not just information in one direction, absorption, but it's up and down, and especially because we are dealing with more and more complex issues. So there are potential trade-offs that a policymaker may not see or a scientist may not see, etc. So that this is a bouncing process, I think, is very wise. What I have learned, and it's still one of my best lessons, when I started to work in the food sector, I was a very immature professional and a scientist who was blind and passionate by my own topics. And then the director told me, you are going to forget everything that you know for 6 months, and you are only allowed to ask questions. Never present what you know. Only try to capture what is at stake, what is the opportunity, what is the challenge, what are policymakers faced with, how is that evolving, try to understand it, and then take it back towards not your science domain, because maybe your science domain will not give an answer, it's totally irrelevant, but try to bring it back to science to see what kind of scientific answers are then possible. But we often have a tendency, if we go to the outside world, to say, I know this and this and this and this is important for policy, etc. But the chance that it is important is nearly zero. It is only valuable if you turn it around and then see that. So I think this is a way of working and a way of adapting. All our young people were trained then in this way, finally. And I think it really changed the mindset. And it was one of my best experience. And the second was, also then you are often left alone, ask for a mentor. This is a mentor not of, and that I've said before also, to tell you what you all did wrong, because the list is too long and then you never stop it during a day. But just as a mirror, put in front of you, what are the consequences of what you are bringing, in what kind of context, and then you can learn a lot. It is a destabilizing activity, that's for sure. But we have now with young people also in the food area, we have a mentoring program. We have with the young ambassadors from the FAO, there was a mentoring program, and the young people are really happy with it. They like to be destabilized because they learn then faster and also see more the relevance of what they can bring.
The destabilization, it's good for everyone, I think, to, yeah, exactly. I like this exercise of only asking questions for 6 months. It's very journalistic. It's very nice, yeah. A quick comment from, I guess we started a little bit late. Are we able to go 5 minutes over? I'm looking at I'm just going to say yes, I'll take it, and then we'll have one more question here. And there's one question from online.
Yeah, if you allow me, because I'm going to speak from my own opinion, so this is not a DIGRO opinion, but I think one of the advantages of a co-funded scheme is that you can work a lot at national level and regional level. And that's something that we have not to overlook, because I think it's one of the strengths that Future Foods has, or of the heritage of FOODPathS. And I'm saying this because many of the things that are happening of interest are granular, are happening in very small silos that we have to break to understand how it works, sometimes to get good policy practices, to get just best practices for whatever they do. Some of the examples that I can think of without guiding anything, because I'm not a strategic and regeneration guidance, but for example, food environments, we know is quite relevant for some municipalities, and is something quite relevant in the sense of how do you link policy to public health, to the municipalities' work. So these are the kind of things that I think is very good that came out from the experience of FOODPathS, and perhaps to also to have some reflection of some of the ideas that were brought there, like, for example, the Knowledge Hub or the Living Labs, or even at the time already in Food 2030, they brought up the policy labs, although they were difficult to implement. But I thought there is more work to be done there, and I'm happy to know that there will be 10 years to go through. So just to bring those reflections there.
There you go, more fun to come, absolutely. Yes, if you could make your question as short as you can, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas, for bringing up public health, because I was on the tip of my chair the whole panel discussion, because a lot of talk was about competitiveness from different sides, and that we all know the Draghi report. But if you don't have a healthy population, and we are becoming unhealthier and diet-related NCDs are increasing in Europe, then I think we're on the wrong track. And I assume that the empty chair was for DG Santé, because they seem to be a little bit missing in the conversation. And I wanted to direct the question to Jonas and to Luis on how do you ensure that that is taken on board and that cooperation is strong enough so that you bring the health perspective in all of this.
The empty chair wasn't, I don't think, anything. I think we had too many chairs. But okay, fine. Yes, we can take this question. Luis?
Yeah, I think all of us can agree with you that the overall objective is to ensure, and I would speak also about public health, but also about One Health as well in this context, where we need to be conscious that we are part of an ecosystem as human beings, and our health is important. And to secure that health, we need also to secure the health of the animals, the environment at large, plants, and so on. The way in which I believe in a context of policy and research and innovation policy in particular is happening is to make sure that when, for example, in the Partnership on Animal Health and Welfare, discussions with the co-founders on what are priorities, in that program, we always incorporate aspects like One Health to ensure that human health is part of the aspects that are addressed through the research and innovation agenda. And when they are not perhaps fully covered, because also we need to acknowledge somehow that the partnerships are context specific. Then we need to find, okay, if there are gaps between the partnerships, and there are partnerships like in Cluster 1 addressing One Health, antimicrobial resistance, very context specific, but are there still gaps among partnerships that we need to foster to inform policy for human health or One Health? Then we still have the program in research and innovation. And there is where we still need to continue stimulating collaborative projects that can fill these gaps. It's very ambitious, I think, and I agree with you to have this idea that one partnership can coordinate the whole landscape and provide for one size fits all. And the partnerships, the co-funded partnerships in particular, was my reference to that they are new, provide an opportunity to see what can be done. But when it's about context specific, where is the health, we need to look into what is happening, stimulate there this dimension, and then are there gaps? Okay, then we need to cover gaps. And the way in which the Horizon Europe program is drafted under Cluster 6 has this gap analysis approach, not only at the strategic windows, but also at the level of preparing the work programs. So I think it's a very valid point, and it's something that we indeed continue to look into when designing research and innovation policies or other policies. Indeed, a pity that we have an empty chair with Santé here to contribute more.
Next time. I think Rosalinda wanted to come in. She thought maybe it would be
just
in
continuation with what Luis was saying. The One Health is on one side, but on the other side, what is currently happening under Horizon Europe is a strict cooperation between Cluster 6 and Cluster 1. So health is really under our radar. If you see the work program 2025 that has been recently published, there are topics for your interest. There are topics under Food 2030 that address mental health and also the prevention of non-communicable diseases, and also citizen awareness on another side, because this makes me to do the link also with a point that was made before, because we don't necessarily need to convince people, but we need to make them aware of all the possibilities that are there and how biotech solutions can provide also healthy food. And even if we have controversial issues with cultivated meat, does not mean that we don't have to explore also other options, like also precision fermentation and ways to produce more proteins, always taking into account that we will need those proteins because of food security issues. So there are many ways that we are exploring for putting also health, human health on the spot, and use different tools, not only under the medicine and what is under Cluster 6, classically addressed by Cluster 6, but by making bridges for healthy diets and for switching to healthy diets. Okay. So thank you for that input.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'm very aware the clock is ticking. I wanted to do a very quick, hopefully, let's see how quick, summary roundup of concluding remarks with a future perspective. And perhaps I can start at the Sylvia's end, if there's a microphone floating around somewhere. Is there? Oh, there is. Excellent. Sylvia, what would success look like for you in the context of FOODPathS, let's say 3 years, 5 years from now? What does it look like for you? Perhaps a little concluding remark looking to the fun to come in the next few years.
Well, this is just a closing word, because it reconnects to my first words. I really feel the legacy I have, and in 3 years, well, we will have to work on many of the deliverables, let's say, of FOODPathS. We will be working on the observatory and on its conceptualization and alignment, also in synergy with the JRC dashboard. We will have to work on the knowledge hubs of living labs. and we will see if we take this legacy in a good way. We will have to implement the new strategic research and innovation agenda. And there we built on the previous agenda. We still have the main pillars that are change the way we eat, change the way we process, change the way we connect, and change the way we govern. And of course, new calls will be built on that, and we will soon open a public consultation to get more inputs, and of course also on health issues that are well taken into consideration. So really, we think we have a lot to do.
Work to be done.
But hopefully we will reach some goals.
Excellent, thank you. Jonas, I pass to you. Sylvia mentioned the living labs there. You also spoke about them. What do you see for the future path, the next 3 years down the line? What does success look like of FOODPathS?
Well, I have to say I don't know how it will look like, but I have to say what will be my wishes. And one of my wishes will be really to work on the food systems concept. Within that remit, also to give a space to research for food industry and consumers and food itself, because I think other partnerships are covering other areas. So I think the partnership has to find its ways not to step on the other research areas, but at the same time create all those boundaries that you were speaking with, which is something I think in FOODPathS, one of the initial difficulties, how to operate on that space. But I think they are doing it already, so this is not a criticism, this is just a wish. The second one is related to the actors, which is the first part that I brought, and I think that was one of the main strengths of FOODPathS. Obviously, perhaps they had more flexibility on their structure to do that, but it's something that I really wish it will be quite inclusive on the type of actors. And I already mentioned SMEs, but there are others like the funders and other kinds of actors that are usually quite too difficult to reach. And my third wish will be a word that has not been said yet, but is impact. Because we don't have to forget that whatever we have to do, it has to have an impact somewhere. I'm not saying that this impact has to be economic or it has to be, necessarily oriented to competitiveness, but certainly has to have a direction, whether it is environmental impact, economic impact, or social impact, as some of you were mentioning. So I think always to have focus on research, to have an outcome at the end that we can actually have on the narrative.
Great, thank you. Very concrete 3 wishes there. Luis, your wish, your view of the future.
My wish, I believe the time frame you mentioned, perhaps, at least in my opinion, should enable the partnership to provide enabling conditions. Enabling conditions as part of other enabling conditions from one of the partnerships, where the research and innovation activities and the communities that are brought together have the capacity to continue to be connected. I'm not sure if through more funding, this I cannot reply to you. Maybe there will be new opportunities to generate new partnerships in different ways in the future, which we don't know today. So those enabling conditions, those capacity building at the level of the member states and associated countries that are participating should help to generate what would be next. And in terms of impact, again, I very much agree with the comment from Jonas that there should be also concrete elements as part of those enabling conditions that perhaps in 5 years will not be realized, but that the evidence and the science is helping to then go to concrete conditions. And last but not least, also perhaps open up a bit the international dimension beyond the EU and associated countries, maybe to nudge, because research and innovation and science is a very nice way to also contribute to not to align, we don't need alignment, but to share our ideas that come through research and innovation, also connecting with policy in an international context.
Excellent, thank you. Hugo and Rosalinda. Oh, Rosalinda first.
Yes, so that Hugo can close.
Yes, that's nice.
I felt already the heaviness of closing it.
Okay, perfect. Just passed on. You don't have to worry about it.
So, yes, I just can wish all the best for all the initiatives that will be built on FOODPath. I see in 3 and 5 years ahead of us, I see successful outcomes for all the projects that are part of the big family of Food 2030, I have to say it, because we are also working currently with 10 experts that are evaluating Food 2030. And we really hope that thanks to the report that these experts will be publishing, we will have more tools for this reflection on the future. So let's build on the success, let's build on the lessons learned, and let's be as concrete as possible with the tools that we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And now Hugo has the weight of the last word.
Yeah, I don't know if I need to say immediately closing words, but that comes afterwards, I presume. So just a very small remark. Now, in the coming 3 years, the first what I hope is that our final report will be accepted by the Commission, because otherwise we have a big problem. So let's go for that. Then, of course, I really hope and wish Future Foods all the best, and also all the other partnerships. They are in the starting phase, but already the passion that is shared in all those partnerships, that is fantastic, and I hope it is put into impact, as Jonas said, because our children are waiting for that. There is no other way. We all have this same obligation. It's our primary need we are talking about, and we need to guarantee it for health reasons, but also for our planetary health reasons. So I hope that it will all be a success, and I also hope with the spirit that you have shown in the past 3 years and today, but also not only spirit, but ideas, I hope that you're going to continue to deliver that. We all are in need for that, but it also gives an immense pleasure because we are daily learning. So I like to thank you very much for that.
Excellent, thank you. Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you to all of our speakers. I now hand you to Emmanuel, who's going to close off the rest of the event. Thank you very much. You can take your seat. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for your participation over the last 3 days. All the materials, the resources from the festival will be on the FOODPathS website, so the posters, the presentation, and also the replay. So please do not hesitate to disseminate the information in your networks, and also take a few minutes to fill in the feedback survey that UFIC will send you by email. And I think we can already congratulate them for the great organization. And I give the last words to Hugo, our FOODPathS Coordinator.
Thanks a lot. Yes, it's an honor to be back here in front of you. And for all, of course, first, I like to thank, like you already just did, the UFIC team. Matteo is not here, but also virtually he was with us. And his full team, really, they did an excellent job. The fact, thanks. And they could do this excellent job thanks to all the work that you have done. Otherwise, there was no festival. It was a party like, the spirit was fantastic. I think lots of smiles in the past days. We like to keep it like this till the end of FOODPathS. I also like, in that sense, to thank all the speakers, the panelists, and you for all your questions, because you have contributed to that. Without that, there was also not such an, I think, pleasure or pleasant event that was now here in the last few days. And I sincerely hope wherever you go, in whatever partnership or large event you enter or already be entered, I hope you will bring this spirit also there and also get the enthusiasm back from your colleagues there. I hope you do that also with people that are working in other sectors, for other stakeholders in other contexts, because that is enriching your and my life, of course, also. I'd like to thank also my co-pilots, or I have to say I'm their co-pilot, Damien and Emmanuel, because they also make it possible that some of the financial issues have been arranged, that this program also could work. and that FOODPathS now is in its nearly final stages. I'm so grateful to Rhea that we have had only constructive meetings with the Commission for our reporting. And sometimes I hear it's not like this. But it is partly thanks to all the skills that I lack, and thanks to the skills of my colleagues from in-rate transfer and all the work that has been delivered by all the parties, that those communications are so fluent. Keep going till the last moment, because you cannot count on me for that. But I hope to join in those discussions with my enthusiasm and spirit, and I like to do that till the last moment. Really thanks also the panelists of the last week. Really thanks our animator, our journalist, Natasha. And I wish you a very good trip back home. Keep your memories, at least the positive ones. Thank you.
Even if several people left, I think Yufik wants to take a picture.